Check, check. All right, good evening, everybody. I've got 5:30. Let's call to order this regular school board meeting of the Williston Basin School District Number 7, March 6, 2023, 5:30 p.m. If everybody could stand for the pledge, please. All right, good evening, everybody. Ashley, if you can call the roll, please.
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here we do have a quorum. We will proceed. Item number 4 is call for changes to the agenda or the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda which require discussion should be moved to the regular agenda at this time. Board members, any changes to the agenda or the consent agenda? Hearing none, agenda will stand as presented. Item number 5, superintendent's report. Dr. Fadley, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Junt. This evening, the first item on the superintendent's report is an update on the career and technical education process and steps that we need to take moving forward prior to its opening in the 24 school year. So Mr. Ben Schaefer is here tonight to walk through a short presentation on our next steps.
Hello, and thank you for having me. I'm from the Western Education Regional Cooperative, now known as the Work Center, the former Great Northwest Regional Education Cooperative. I know most of you, I guess, personally, but as always, if you can always, someone on this board has my contact number, so if there's questions you think of afterwards, feel free to call. Also, this is the first time I've ever done something similar to Hunter Berg, where I'll finish first. So it's a first for me. So. We have a PowerPoint kind of prepared. Kim Murphy is my CTE director. I'm actually the director of the Regional Education Association, which oversees the CTE. So this is her words, and I'm going to do the best I can to muddle through it. But if there's questions I can't answer tonight, I will get you back the answer because it's mainly her specialty, not mine. So flip that. With the coronavirus money and the money that was given out for the CTE centers, originally the plan was when we were doing our strategic planning as a CTE center with Dr. Schatz last year, the plan was for all of us to be together. As we got into that and figured things out with the state CTE board, they said we can't give the same group two pots of money to go to the same group. It would have to be two separate groups. So that changed how our planning had to happen and made the road a little windier and rockier. We'll get to the same place eventually with mergers and things down the road. But as for how it has to happen now, that's the way it has to happen so that the money can flow to both districts. So that's the reason for the changes. And what you'll have to do is get 3 different districts to sign off. And if this school board is okay with it, Watford City is okay with it, we're going to send out sample motions to those districts so that they can get it correct and they can dissolve the old CTE center, which is the virtual CTE center that we currently have, and we'll then have 2 different brick and mortar CTE centers that will work together hand in hand in conjunction, and our organization will still facilitate that work. I guess you can go to the next one. So the JPA is really kind of like your operating document that will say kind of how you're going to run things with your new CTE center, and that's how you gain approval. We'd like to have the JPAs done no later than June 30th so that we can hit the ground running June 1st. Watford City won't have a building, Williston won't have a building, but we're working toward that. So I won't bore you with with the rest of that, you guys can check this information out. I don't need to read to you. And you do have to publish it in the paper once the thing is passed. I did want to mention that. And then after that, you'll have to determine your own center board, which is separate from this board. Some members of this board can be on it. And then you'll have to do an assessment of the participating districts to share expenses. And so what we talked about was just doing 3 districts with Williston right now, and the remainder that want to do it with Watford because they're a year ahead of kind of where you're at. So that was why. A lot of this century code is stuff that you can read, but have to have 1 board member per 300 high school students. So if you're working with those 3 districts, you'd have to have a board member from each of those districts to represent that CTE board and make those decisions going forward. Because it's a regional center, and that's how you get the funding for a regional center, and you get the reimbursement at a higher rate. So you'll get 75% reimbursed for your people in the new building for the first year, and then it goes down back to 40 eventually, but it kind of helps you get that start. Center board appointments, the initial meeting must be called and conducted by the chairman of the state board, and then after that, they can meet monthly. So we'll be working. We've had several meetings with Dr. Fadley, Dr. Holland, myself, Wade Sick, Mark Wagner from CTE. So we're just trying to do the background work so that we can get both centers up and running. There's a lot of century code referenced in there if you guys are really interested in reading it, but yeah, I wanted Kim to have it in there for you if there are questions later on. It's there for you to refer to, all the references for anything that you might need to do for your specific CTE center for your region. And yet, that just kind of talks about that regional model. And so, with you both receiving funds, work can't do it like we had planned. I mean, it's basically just explaining that. Next slide. Our plan is to return to that regional model where we're working together with Williston as a hub, Watford as a hub. Hopefully Newtown would like to come on as a hub. They have a very nice CTE center down there. And we're hoping to get another hub in a Tioga, or so that those kids don't have to travel so far and miss so much school, but still be able to do those hands-on days more often per month with the CTE things. So overall, our strategic vision hasn't changed. It's just the road to get there has. And so just wanted to update you guys and stand for any questions that you might have regarding the project or, yes.
Ms. Wheeler?
Just a clarifying question. Where it says each participating school district is allowed 1 board member for 300 high school students. Is that high school census overall, or is that high school students participating in CTE?
I think that's overall census.
Okay.
Yep. And I think if they have, as I understand it when I read it, I think if they have that amount of students, which none of the schools you're working with would have 300 high school students, they wouldn't have to do that if they didn't have 300 students. So you could do it from people from the community if you wanted, and that would be your choice as a board of how to do it. But don't take my word for it because I'm not a lawyer. So.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, then again, so another clarifying question. We'd have over 1,200 students in our high school.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be 3 for us.
Right. You would have to have.
Yep. Now, Ray or Trenton, are they included in this to be able to participate with us if we were to move forward with it, or?
So the 3 districts that Dr. Holland and I discussed and agreed upon for our center were Ray, Trenton, and Grenora.
Okay, perfect. All right.
And it's really just it's to get us to where we need to be. We're going to all work together still, so there should be hopefully a seamless transition from that to the large regional sense instead of just smaller regional sense. And CTE's on board with it. It's just in order to get the dollars flowing where they need to flow, when they need to flow there, this was the path we had to take.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. That was all I had right now.
Ms. Williams?
Yeah, also kind of on the same line of questioning. So how many board members are you guys looking at initially starting with Watford, Williston, and those three? Obviously, the three would just have one each.
I believe Watford is looking at like a 7-member board, and you guys could look at whatever you want to look at. I mean, however you guys want to make that up. I'm not going to tell anyone how they have to do their business. So just so there's representation according to Century Code is all you'd have to, and the state board coming out, you know, the person from the state board president who comes out to do that would be able to answer that for you and say what you need, but it's pretty clear in Century Code.
Perfect. And I'll look into that. And that's just something to kind of put out if that's something that the public can get on and not just board. I mean, I haven't looked into this as much as I probably should at this point, but you know, I just want them to have that idea of who can participate, how the terms are going to be done. You know, we have out-of-city people on our board is what we're considered, and in-city, you know, so I'm just very interested to see how you guys make it up, you know, and how many, because we always hear there's a point to too many board members, right? So just very interested, but I will be looking at this presentation that you guys send out more, so thank you.
Yeah, and I know Watford City is kind of setting theirs in a way that they're hoping that there's 3 or 4 of them that want to stay on to the larger board if there's a merger a couple years down the road or a year down the road or whenever we get to where we get. But
Any other questions for Mr. Schaefer? Thank you very much.
thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Ben. Next item on the superintendent's report this evening is the elementary school presentation from Wilkinson Elementary and Jeremy Brenner. The principal is here to share that presentation with you.
Welcome to Wilkinson Elementary School. My name is Jeremy Brenner and I'm the principal, and I'd like to share a little about our school. As Wilkinson staff, we are proud of our climate and culture and know that every student, parent, and visitor will be greeted with a smile when they enter our school. Our mission at Wilkinson is to ensure a safe, nurturing environment that motivates and challenges all students to reach their maximum potential. And our vision of Wilkinson is to work in partnership with families to be fully committed to the success of all students. Wilkinson Elementary School is a Title I school with approximately 31% of our students qualifying for free and reduced lunch. This is up from 19% the previous year, which we attribute to the availability of a QR code, which was provided at our open house in the beginning of the year, and it simplified the application process for families to fill out. Wilkinson has an enrollment of about 330 students, which can fluctuate approximately 5 students in any given week. We have 2 sections of kindergarten and 3 sections each of grades 1 through 4. Wilkinson student demographics is constantly changing, and we are proud of our diversity. We hope that every student is able to identify culturally with peers if needed, and we hope that everyone feels like they are a valued member of our school family, from students to staff. The numbers in parentheses around the outside of the left pie chart indicates last year's demographics at Wilkinson. As you can see, we are becoming a more diverse school every year. On the bottom right, you'll notice that Wilkinson surpasses the district average in low-income students, special education students, and English learners. Wilkinson's homeless population is only about half of the district average. Wilkinson employs a total of 53 staff. We have 26 classified staff consisting of custodial, food service, and paraprofessionals, both general ed and special education. We also have 27 certified teachers. We are lucky to have had 9 new babies or expecting mothers in the past year and a half. And even while short of space in our school, we have managed to create a private room for our new moms to feel comfortable and provide privacy. Lending to our family feel, we also have 22 students attending Wilkinson whose parents work here. And we have 11 Wilkinson staff whose spouses also work for Williston Basin School District Number 7. Wilkinson has a yearly staff wall like most schools, but we are especially proud of our family photo wall that is a yearly tradition and is displayed for the entire school year. Family photos are traditionally taken during open house or on the first day of school. Pictured here are just a few of our PTO mothers. Our PTO returned to Wilkinson 3 years ago, and it's steadily growing each year. Also pictured is our annual Turkey Bingo fundraiser, which not only supports the staff and students of Wilkinson, but also provides support to families outside of our school and throughout the community of Williston. Pictured in the bottom right-hand corner, we are excited to show our new playground equipment, which has arrived, and we're eagerly waiting to have it installed this spring when the ground thaws. As a military veteran and an educator who has experienced a school shooting, I take the safety of our school and its students serious. I believe this is especially important because of Wilkinson's high traffic location and our proximity to surrounding businesses. Pictured here are just some of our building response team members. The BRT team members routinely watch traffic outside of the school and check doors regularly for security. Because of the age of our school, door locks and keys can be an issue. Wilkinson uses many different types of keys and locks on doors, which can become confusing in an emergency situation. For safety, we have had badge readers installed on main exterior doors to reduce the time it would take to enter a building in case of a threat. We currently have work orders submitted to have card readers installed on the remaining exterior doors. We have also had additional cameras installed both inside and outside of the school and playground for added security. Lately, we've been experimenting with perforated film on our main exit doors for privacy. Here you can see our door 3, which is a limited pickup door. Unfortunately, the perforated film works best in sunny conditions, so we've also ordered window tint that we will be exploring and installing on other main entrances once the weather warms up. The added security is especially helpful in winter months and when it's dark outside, or for our evening staff for privacy and their own peace of mind while working at night. Here you can also see that we've installed exterior lighting. It was recently installed in the front of our school for added security. Wilkinson Elementary School is an SEL school, as are most of the schools in our district. Teachers provide safe, private spaces for students who are frustrated or upset, in addition to providing lessons about emotional regulation, conflict resolution skills, or coping strategies. As part of our SEL program, we recognize our students in a variety of ways. We have a monthly awards assembly to recognize one student from each of the 14 classes for their efforts. We also have a citizenship program where students earn tickets school-wide every day for going above and beyond. One student from each classroom is drawn and receives a special pencil each Friday, as well as 2 lucky students who earn a $5 Dairy Queen gift card. Finally, the Golden Garbage Can Award is our most prized award. The cleanest classroom is chosen each month and receives a pizza party for the pride they take in the cleanliness of their classroom. The custodians appreciate the additional help, and the students take pride and ownership in keeping their classroom and school looking nice. All of the prizes, from pencils to pizza, awarded to our students have been provided by our PTO. Through donations from Wilkinson families and our PTO, we also have a well-supplied food and clothing supply that we store in our loft. We strive to support all of our Wilkinson families who may be transitioning in life or need additional assistance, and we want to ensure that no student or family should be without any of these necessities. Wilkinson, like most schools, also integrates science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, or STEAM, into our curriculum. Students have daily opportunities in both their classrooms as well as their specialist classes to do hands-on activities to encourage more movement and engaging collaborative work. Many of our classes have started incorporating more right brain activities such as art into their day. Right brain activities increase a student's ability to concentrate, improves memory, and allows students to understand concepts as well as improving fine motor skills. These activities are also calming for students especially on cold days when they have indoor recess. Our music teacher, Mrs. Winslow, is in her second year at Wilkinson and has been an amazing addition to our staff. Wilkinson has approximately 30 keyboards and is the only K-4 school, to my knowledge, in the district that provides piano instruction to students in grades 2 through 4. A fun fact noted here, children who study the piano for 2 years or more can remember 20% more vocabulary words than their peers. Mr. Holman is our library media specialist and is passionate about plants and gardening, as well as anything STEAM related. In the Library Media Center, students love the Ozobots, 3D printing, and constructing most anything out of cardboard. Most of the younger students have even been referring to themselves lately as engineers. This year, Mr. Holman grew sunflowers and giant pumpkins in front of our school, which provided students with many opportunities in both science and math. Mr. Holman and I have already been discussing the possibility of a butterfly garden for Wilkinson next year. Students love watching things grow, plus it adds to the aesthetics at the front of our school. Rock Your School Day was a national day last fall that was promoted by the company Get Your Teach On. This school year, over 60,000 educators nationwide participated by creating engaging lessons and activities for their students. All elementary schools in Williston took part in the same event in some manner. Rock Your School Day had an impact on over 1 million students with their project-based learning. Wilkinson's former secretary, Mrs. Schissel, even returned as our surprise guest reader. And because of its success, this year's Rock Your School Day has already been scheduled for September 29th. Similar to Rock Your School Day, classroom transformations are theme and project-based activities that some teachers and grade levels choose to do and can sometimes last throughout an entire week. Classroom transformations are exciting for students, but usually a lot of work for teachers. Pictured here is one of our third grade teachers, Miss Charles, who chose a football theme for her class last fall. Wilkinson has a few innovative features that we are proud of and we feel separate us from many other schools. We're on the smaller side as far as elementary schools go, so we've had to make use of all of our available space for learning. We've recently added cloth privacy panels in our halls to create additional learning spaces for small groups, especially during our intervention or win time. These panels can be open for use and limit distractions for students that often exist in the hallways. Another feature of Wilkinson that we are especially proud of are the pedal desks that we purchased at the beginning of this school year. We purchased one for each third and fourth grade classroom as a way to provide flexible seating options in the classroom and to promote movement for our students. We encourage healthy choices and habits whenever possible for both our students and staff. We also realize that all the good we do for our school and students mean very little if they aren't learning. Here we have Ames Web math and reading data for kindergarten this year. My apologies for the small print, but the colored graphs will show that in both our early literacy and early numeracy, the green for kindergartners is growing and the red is shrinking. The green or Tier 1 represents students on grade level, and the red or Tier 3 represents students who are testing below grade level. The yellow indicates students who are at risk of falling below grade level and are identified as strategic or Tier 2 students. Kindergarten traditionally shows more rapid growth in our test scores and data because of the initial exposure to learning in the material. Again, we see in our first grade that our green is also growing and we are reducing our red. And again in second grade. Here we can also see that early numeracy is an area where we are making more rapid growth. These are discussions that our staff have in PLCs to determine the reasons for success and create opportunities for different grade levels to compare instructional techniques and strategies with their colleagues. Starting in third grade and continuing to fourth, we use iReady for our diagnostic assessment. These graphs represent all Wilkinson students in grades K through 4. The top graph represents the fall assessment, and the bottom represents the most recent winter assessment. We will be doing our spring assessment beginning the second week in May to determine the students' year-long growth. Again, I apologize for the small print at the bottom, but those are the more specific areas in reading and language arts, such as phonological awareness, phonics, high-frequency words, vocabulary, and comprehension in both literature and informational text. In the past several years, phonological awareness and phonics have been an area of weakness for many of our students. In a couple minutes, I'll get to one of our solutions for targeting and improving those areas. In each of the bottom two graphs on the left, you'll notice areas with less green as indicated by the arrows. Those areas are vocabulary and comprehension, which teachers have identified through their professional learning community, or PLCs. Our teachers have begun addressing these areas immediately through bell or morning work, in some small groups, and even during the intervention time. The small box by the right lower pyramid shows the percentage gains by grade level. Again, kindergarten traditionally shows higher gains because of their new exposure to school and basic material. Here are the iReady scores for math for the fall and winter. The specific subcategories are numbers and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, and geometry. Last school year, teachers were able to identify through PLCs and disseminating scores that measurement and data was an area of weakness at Wilkinson. This too was an area in need of improvement that teachers quickly addressed through morning work, small groups, intervention time, and giving more time to this subgroup in general. Again, the small group by the right, lower pyramid, shows the percentage gains by grade level, with kindergarten again showing the highest gains. As I mentioned earlier, phonics and phonological awareness were areas that our staff had identified as being low in past years. Wilkinson, along with one or two other elementary schools, piloted the Haggerty Phonemic Awareness Program in our classrooms, in addition to the phonics program called VOAC. There's a heavy emphasis with phonics, especially in the primary grades, because of the critical years for reading development. Some students may recognize Mrs. Van Hecken, pictured here, who models lessons for our students in phonics using the Haggerty program, which can either be shown as a video to students or delivered by the teacher the old-fashioned way using a teacher's guide. We attribute a lot of our growth to programs like these that we believe are improving scores in phonics. One of our students, Hannah, is pictured here holding a math activity which focuses on measurement, which I mentioned earlier. We purchased 4 dual burner hot plates if teachers would like to conduct a cooking lesson that includes measurement. We've also purchased tape measures for students' use. They're sometimes tangible so that the students can use something to measure various objects, plus they're fun to use. This April 18th, we are scheduled to begin our NDSA testing, which is the state standardized tests our schools are judged on. NDSA testing is for grades 3 and up. We are happy to announce that Wilkinson's scores showed greater gains in last year's scores versus the previous year than all other elementary schools in the district, and we hope to see the same results this year. I want to thank you for allowing me to take some time to present Wilkinson Elementary School to you, and if you have a chance to visit, I think you'll love it as much as we do. Welcome to Wilkinson Elementary.
Thank you, Mr. Brenner. Board members, any questions that you have for Mr. Brenner this evening?
I just have a couple of statements. One of the things, Mr. Brenner, that I wrote down is having that QR code for the free and reduced lunches. Thank you so much for, one, implementing that, because one of the biggest things we talk about is making it easier for the people it affects. And not only does it help the school district, it helps the students, it helps your school. So thank you guys for being proactive with that, and hopefully that is something we will continue to use. The other thing I wanted to say is thank you for your service to our country, and now obviously your dedication to students. What a life of service you've done. That's incredible. So I always want to tell people thank you for that. So the other thing is your photo wall. Even before I knew that was a big deal, that was one of the biggest things I looked forward to on the website for District 1 back in the day, was that photo wall. It's just, you can just see the excitement from students, parents, probably for different reasons, but students to go to school, parents for a little bit of quiet time. But and then the pedal desk, I have done your walkthrough and just seeing the students kind of trying to earn that privilege, you called it. It exists, but it's also a privilege to use it. And I just love incentives that are for not only health, but education. So thank you guys for that. And then the security cameras, I did have one question with that. with the pool going kind of in your area, has anybody kind of talked to you about that and how you're doing your security, or is that kind of implemented with those security cameras, is to kind of help with that traffic that now may be consistently throughout the summer kind of around your school and your playground?
We haven't had those discussions yet, but that's definitely a concern. We do have a good high fence, which gives our playground a lot of security. I think we have requested a camera on the back door to give us some visibility from the back entrance.
Yeah, just something I definitely want to be proactive with, and I know Mr. Clausen had done his walkthrough with everyone during at one point to trying to figure out the security things, but those are those things that for you, I definitely want to make sure that we're taking care of that while the process is being put in place by the city.
So Mr. Barton Hagan is taking notes on his phone, I see back there, so we will address it.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I guess just to we were just talking about this right when I walked in, so this I think is relevant, but Wilkinson is one of my schools, Mr. John, that, we kind of were given throughout the school year. But we've kind of talked about this. I do feel like maybe in the future, what our roles are when we're in there and what we can and can't do and, all that, because I would like to volunteer more, not just stop in and, see them, maybe actually stay and watch the STEAM projects and, all that. And sometimes I don't know where the line is being crossed. And so I know Fargo's implemented that already for years. And so I don't know if Mr. Johnson would be a good person to reach out to, or if that's something we could, because I think Mr. Berner and I are partners in this and we're not quite sure what we're doing sometimes. So I don't know how the other board members are doing on their visits. But I have also heard that some schools haven't gotten any visits. So I think there may just be a disconnect of, what we can and what we can't do. So.
Yeah, so I think the board has adopted policy that would cover this, which would be the visitors in school policy, I think, which also applies to board members. It's KAAA maybe. Don't hold me to that, but that policy would just govern board member just like it would any other visitor in the school.
Perfect. Well, I'll be seeing you, Mr. Bernard. So thank you.
Mr. Brenner, thank you for taking pride and ownership in the school that I attended in grade school. So the school is really not that old. You did an excellent job highlighting the various areas of the school. I appreciate that. But you didn't say anything about the food service part of the whole thing. My wife works in the kitchen, so I'm just saying. Thank you, Mr. Brenner. We appreciate what you're doing. And I know from my wife who's working there, she takes a great deal of pride in the school and has a great deal of respect for the leadership. So that's on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallstead. Ms. Wheeler?
Once again, you stole my thunder. I know, I'm teasing. First, I just wanted to jump on in regards to visiting schools. I usually communicate with the principal a date and visit. So, I like what you're doing over there. I hear a lot of good feedback. The one thing that I hear the most about is the golden garbage can. A lot of kids seem to like that, working together, keeping their room clean. And I wasn't sure what the golden garbage can meant. And then I had to do a little bit of research, and then I figured it out. And I was talking with one of your teachers, and she filled me in on it. So very good job. And then the last comment I wanted to make was on the mother's room. That is phenomenal. I know that we have a number of staff in the district who are new moms, and having a place where they can take care of whatever personal business they need to do is important. And then any parent who has a new baby who might need some time, maybe at a teacher conference or what have you, it's important to have that space. So thank you. And I wish other schools had the ability to do that. That would be wonderful. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Brenner.
Mr. Chunt, the final item on my superintendent's report this evening is an update on Garden Valley and Round Prairie for the 23-24 school year. There are a lot of rumors that are circulating out in the community, and I just wanted to take a few moments to publicly state the plans for Garden Valley Elementary and for Round Prairie next school year. First and foremost, I'll start with Garden Valley. Garden Valley is currently a K-2 school. It will move and transition next year into a K-4 configuration, and it will have two sections of each grade, two sections at each grade level. This will play a part in eliminating some of the overcrowding in some of our other elementary schools. Second is Round Prairie. Round Prairie currently houses 22 students out at that school. The plan for next year is to transition Round Prairie into what's referred to as a newcomer center for our most intensive EL learners. Currently, the school district has over 400 EL English language learner students. This is a model similar to other Class A school districts like Fargo and Bismarck and Grand Forks. The Newcomer Center will provide much needed intensive services. We will have a district EL coordinator, 2 EL teachers, and a paraprofessional working with approximately 70 students out there next year. The day, as it is in its infancy plan, will consist of students arriving at their home school, having breakfast, and then being bussed out to Round Prairie, where they will receive 2 hours of intensive English instruction prior to being bussed back to their home schools for lunch and for the remainder of the afternoon classes. We feel that alleviating the rumors that these 2 schools are closing is important. We plan to use them for the 23-24 school year, and hopefully we can build this newcomer center out at Round Prairie into a model for the state. That concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Fadley. Ms. Wheeler?
Yeah, I had a couple questions in regards to the Newcomer Center. I'm very familiar with the other centers that exist, predominantly in the Fargo area. So what grades are going to be going out there?
We're currently figuring that out. We're looking to try to service all students out there that we currently have a need for that would be in that first grouping of students as per the, I can't remember the acronym for the Zella test, I believe it's called. So it would be determined based on that assessment. So we're anticipating approximately 70.
Okay. And then that answers my second question, was how are you going to make the selections of who is going to go? I do like this idea. I think that it's a good use of this building. My only major concern is the grade configuration and who's going to be there and how they're going to be separated, considering the fact that we are a K through 12 district. And we do have some students at the high school who need these extra services. It's not just the younger grades. That can be sometimes a misconception.
That is correct. So as we continue our planning, we'll bring more information back to the board in terms of the final structure.
Okay. So I'm anticipating that you're probably going to have all of this laid out in the plans by the end of the school year in preparation of getting it started for next school year?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Yeah, I just wanted to know kind of how you were looking at rolling this out, like Mrs. Wheeler was just saying, communicating it with the EL parents, EL students, let alone the staff and the students that will be moving in. Like, when will they know which schools they're going to, and vice versa of, kind of even the, to a point, Missouri Ridge. I know it says Garden Valley and Round Prairie, but kind of all that. How are you kind of rolling all that stuff out to those individual families?
So first and foremost, my experience and what I know about English language learner families is a lot of times there's hesitancy to come to the school environment. So whatever we do needs to be pushed out into the community so that there's a feeling of comfort with them showing up and learning about the program that we're planning to roll out. So working with our communication department to develop communications in different languages is a key strategy for that. And then getting out there and making sure the media announces it as well, whether it's the radio stations or the newspaper, our Parent Square platform, which they can convert into their native language, is another good tool. All of those things are still in the works. We've been working really hard to conceptualize how we're going to make it work in terms of all of the different grade levels that we have, because we do have needs kindergarten through 12th grade. So we have to make sure as we plan with that in mind and make sure the kids are split in a way that they can be learning in the most productive, intensive environment possible. So more information to come. You know, I think it's a fabulous use of this school facility, and we look forward to providing these services. They're long overdue.
I did have one more follow-up question.
Go to Mr. Swinton, then I'll come back to you, Ms. Wheeler.
Mine's going to be related to the transportation piece going to the facility. When we transport these students, obviously we've seen this year, we've had road conditions that have been dangerous on many occasions. How are we going to assure that these students will still be getting this training within the building that they currently attend if they're not able to go out there for prolonged periods of time?
I think we'll need to develop some what we would call weather day lessons that we can utilize in each one of those buildings, getting our staff on that as soon as possible in the event that they're not able to make their way out there due to road conditions, which is a reality in this part of the country. But there are ways that we can use technology. We can use you know, our existing platforms that we have in place to really teach, and the board was very grateful in passing this Elevate curriculum, which I think is going to be very helpful in this environment.
Ms. Wheeler?
Okay, so I apologize. I should have looked at my notes a little closer. When it comes to the middle school and high school students, since they have all of their classes broken up throughout that day, I would imagine there's going to have to be some creativity with creating those schedules to make sure that they're still getting access to all their cores. And then for those students, would they lose out on some electives by participating in this program?
I think it depends on their level, based on the Azalea. You know, if they're the more intensive students, getting their cores out at what would be the newcomer center, and then assimilating into the elective classes where they could have an opportunity to interact with other students. What we know from English language learners is the more they get to use a language, the better they learn it, and the quicker they are able to assimilate. So I would imagine that their elective courses would be planned in the afternoon and their cores in the morning.
Okay. And then would this work in conjunction with the credits required for graduation?
We're planning that to occur, yes.
Okay, perfect. And then the last question, this is in reference to the other newcomer centers that exist, predominantly Fargo. They have pieces in place for parents who are non-English speaking, where they have resources, access to Translate Line, which is a contractual service that the state has. Are we going to incorporate those eventually, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, eventually we will be making it a full-fledged for both kids and parents as resources, but we're kind of taking one step at a time to make sure we do it right.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, thank you. Now I am done.
Any other questions from the board?
Would all the students be bused together at the same time? Could there potentially be like a senior being bused with a third grader, or how is that gonna work? You know, would there be supervision on the bus other than the supervisor or the bus driver?
Yeah, we're working all of that out, but the answer to your question is yes. For the younger kids, we'll need supervision on the bus. More than likely, that will be on the younger grades. The older students, not so much.
But would they be on the bus together at the same time, or they would be separated?
I don't know that it would be a good thing based on the configuration. So we'll probably have a split. That'll make parents feel more comfortable.
I just want to, I'm sure the public wants to know too.
The good news about the transportation piece is it's after student drop-off at the regular school time, so there are plenty of drivers that would be available during that time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to Mr. Renner's point, those are those little things that once we kind of know they're, you know, we've thought about them, we have to understand that other people are probably thinking about them. And this is where I feel like, where we've kind of referenced rumors and stuff, rumors can be squashed with as soon as the information is known. We don't have to wait for, you know, a lot of these things. And I feel like that's one of the things we've done is we've been waiting for presentations or whatever it be, when really small questions could and should be probably answered along the way, especially again for the students, the staff, and the parents that it affects. And that's my one ask moving forward on a lot of things is just we need to be as proactive as we would think as parents, not just as board members. So
As soon as we get the plan developed, we will communicate it out to everyone humanly possible.
Any other questions for Dr. Fadley on the superintendent report on any of the items? Just to circle back to your question, Ms. Williams, it's board policy BFD that governs board member visits to schools.
thank you, Chairman Jen.
Great, let's go to committee reports next, number 6, and we'll start with the Personnel and Finance Committee.
If it will pull up on my screen,
The internet's very slow. I had to switch to my hotspot on my phone. You can use
okay, at the Personnel and Finance Committee meeting, we discussed the following items. We had a presentation from Mr. Anderson on the monthly financial report. We discussed the interim fund carryover percentage, and we talked about deferring that to the policy committee for the development of a policy on the interim fund carryover percentage, which basically is how much money are we planning to set as a limit for the carryover of the general fund, 01 fund. We discussed the forensic audit proposals that were retrieved by Mr. Anderson, and at that committee, we recommended an OPAS on the forensic audit proposals that came out of the committee. We approved a COBRA proposal that would really handle the management of all things related to COBRA, which is the insurance once you leave the district. It's kind of a gap insurance, and this particular company would assist the employees who are leaving to find the lowest cost services. We discussed the deferred maintenance projects recommendations. There was a presentation by Mr. Lippert from JLG. That item is on the agenda this evening. We authorized the request for transport proposals for a transportation bid for K4 transportation services and all existing transportation services we currently have. And then we renewed our contract with Frontline Education and finally approved the minutes.
Board members, any questions on the Personnel and Finance Committee update?
What was the dollar amount, if you came down to one, for the carryover funds amount that was discussed?
So we had a range, a minimum of 15% with a maximum of 20% carryover, and that aligned very well with all of the other Class C school districts.
Okay. Do you know what that dollar amount was, not the percentage?
So it would be 15% of 61 million, so that would be approximately 30 million. No, excuse me, 20 million.
Okay, I don't have a calculator in front of me. I could have figured it out, but I thought I might have the clip.
About 20 million.
About 20 million. Okay.
And the carryover percentage is generally based off of next year's projected expenses, so depending on what the budget looks like for next year. And that's some of the policy language that the Personnel and Finance Committee thought was important to have that laid out, that it's a percentage of next year's budget and any other recommendations. So Policy Committee will be tasked with putting that to a policy, and then that'll be brought to the board for consideration.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. That was all that I had right now about that.
Mr. Swin?
This was just more a generalization question with these committee reports that we do. When we are posting these agendas for these committees and then stating each item that was done in the committees and gone over, even though they may not be on the board's agenda, they are presented as items. Does that open these items for full discussion of the board at every meeting?
You asking if any of the items on the committee report are open for discussion?
Yes, each time that it's posted.
Yep.
Just doing that for clarification purposes. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else? Questions on Personnel and Finance? All right, if not, let's go to Building and Grounds next.
So the Buildings and Grounds Committee met on Tuesday, February 28th at 4:30 p.m. On our agenda that evening, we reviewed the Memorandum of Understanding with the Coyote Foundation. The committee forwarded that for consideration of the full board. We had an informational discussion on 117 7th Avenue West, which is the Yellow House. I received some direction to explore costs for demolition of that property moving forward, as there was a inspection report that identified 77 pages worth of items, very expensive items to repair that facility. There was an informational presentation by JLG regarding, wasn't specifically related to just the Innovation Campus. We did talk about some potential solutions at the Bakken Elementary School for creating classroom space. And then we talked about, in item number 4, the approval of construction documents, bid packet number 2 items, and the bid packet number 1 items with updated cost estimates. That's included on the board agenda this evening. And then finally, we approved the February 13th Buildings and Grounds meeting minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Fadley. Board members, any questions on the Building and Grounds Committee report?
I just had one. It sparked my interest in regards to the Bakken classroom space question. How many empty classrooms or unused classrooms do we have right now, since you guys just talked about it, at the Bakken?
It depends on what you're defining as classroom space. There are some science labs that are currently large spaces that could be turned into, instead of 1 classroom, 2 classrooms. And then there's some administrative office space that could be recaptured and turned into classroom space as well. So our initial conversation was that in the analysis that we performed, if we did some minor remodeling, we could, for the foreseeable future, handle some of the space issues that we're going to have moved through that building, and it would be money well spent because it would be used long-term.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Anybody else, building and grounds? Right, hearing none, let's go to item number 7 next, which is public comment. Public participation at board meetings is governed by board policy, BCBA. Meetings of the board are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the business of the schools and therefore are not public, meetings, but meetings held in public. Although there is no legal requirement that the public be given an opportunity to speak at the board meetings, it is a policy of this board to afford that opportunity in accordance with the following procedures. 1, only items on the published board agenda will be discussed at any meeting of the board unless the superintendent or a board member requests an addition to the agenda of a regular meeting and the board members present approve in accordance with board policy. Please state your name for the record. State the agenda item you are commenting on. Comments will be limited to no more than 4 minutes. No individual may speak more than once. Public comment will be limited to no more than 30 minutes total. Board has adopted policies governing patron complaints. Public is required to seek redress through these policies. Public will be prevented from commenting on a topic if it is 1, governed by a district complaint policy and the complainant has not followed the procedure contained in policy, and or the policy prohibits from bringing the complaint before the board, or 2, concerns a topic that is prohibited by law from disclosure to the public, such as a student's educational record. If anybody wishes to provide public comment, please step forward here to the podium this evening. State your name for the record as well as the agenda item that you are commenting on.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Hollingsworth. Comment on 9P. So within the packet, the board packet that was available to us, I was reading in the emails from Mr. Kent Anderson and Brady Martz he had spoken with. And within his email, he stated, my question is, would Brady Martz also be able to give Williston Basin School District a quote on what is most cost for the district to go deeper than the state auditor's office in request to find the missing $318,150? I don't recall anywhere where the public had said just that number. I recall the people questioning overall. That's not just finance, that's processes, procedures, and so on and so forth. That's what a forensic would look into and see if there are any other findings beyond what they found and answer some of those other further deeper questions. But with this, this is, now it raises concerns of, the board doesn't seem to be listening to the people, for one, and second of all, this is a very minimum request versus what the people have asked. This is very specific. It almost makes it wonder, it's considering this audit was so one of the largest in the state and the most findings ever, it just raises question in a person's mind if there's something to hide. Also, looking at Bailey and their letter, this is strictly only on financials. Again, that's not what the people asked for. We weren't asking just for financials. We can see that in the auditor's report. But it's a question here or a comment on their letter stated, should additional items surface during our examination, we will only proceed after consultation with you. Well, what's the point? We're questioning you. So that does not, this is not concise with what the people have asked for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hollingsworth.
evening. I'm going to talk really loud because no one on the internet can hear what anybody's saying when they're at this mic. But I am Charlotte Moore, and I would like to ask a question on the financial report number 6 or 9, Pete. So we will spend $1.2 million on marketing a bond, but when it comes to a forensic audit, we will not spend the money. Several of you are business owners. If it was recommended by an auditor to have a forensic audit, would you have the same opinion and treat your money as you are the taxpayers' money? That's my question. Thank you.
Just a quick clarifying question for you, Ms. Moore. What are you referring to when you reference $1.2 million for marketing a bond?
I thought we weren't supposed to ask questions.
The board is afforded the opportunity to clarify your question.
It's all in our financials.
Are you-
Previous
You're
bonds?
referring to the financial audit?
No,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Chair, for clarification, has this board run a bond or done anything related to a bond with District 7?
Have not.
Thank you.
Chairman Gent, and just the board in general, I was under the impression that the auditor made it very clear that the people on this board would not have had a chance to make or do anything with the audit that was just reported on. So we are here to correct the issues, but the people on the audit report would have been who would have been part of that. So just for clarification to the public.
Anybody else, public comment this evening?
So my name's Susan Draper, and I'm with District 1, or whatever you want to say. So a little clarification on the people that are on
Which
the board.
agenda item are you speaking to, ma'am?
On the audit and then on the finance.
Thank you.
So on the audit, there are, I think, 2 of you at least that were on the previous board, so they were part of that audit. And then can somebody answer me why we didn't receive financials at this meeting? They were presented at the personal finance, but they weren't presented at the public. Is there a reason why?
Happy to follow up with you after the meeting on that.
I'm not the only one in the community, but that's fine.
We don't respond to questions at the meeting. Thank you. Anybody else, public comment this evening?
My name is Mark Moore, and I'm speaking to the superintendent's report. I don't know if this is actually allowed or whatnot, but my comment was actually for Mr. Brenner. Is there any way the community can get more involved with the things that you're doing for the food and clothing for the needy families? Or is that just something that can come through like the teachers and parents of that particular school? Okay. Okay, so that's something I can actually speak to you directly afterwards or at another time about for something like that. Okay, thank you. Also, I wanted, same topic, thank you again for your update on the security. It's great to see it being put to a priority in our school system. I know it's been addressed several times, but thank you for addressing that and showing us about it. Your school looks phenomenal in those respects. Last comment, same thing. It comes from the report from Mr. Fadley, and this is for Mr. Swint and Mr. Renner. I wanted to thank you both for your acknowledgement of the travel concerns of the parents and the community members for the travel to Round Prairie. Those are 2 great questions that have been talked about behind the scenes with parents and in group meetings or whatever. So thank you for bringing that up and addressing those 2 issues, as they are 2 huge issues that, you know, are being addressed. So that's a good thing. The weather topic came up quite heavily. You know, what do we do when that type of thing happens? So I appreciate that, the board members are actually looking into some of those things. My only concern with that is not based on the weather and stuff like that you guys already spoke about, but do we have another area or another school or, you know, another facility that we can possibly look at for that? We're literally taking a lot of our younger children and whatnot and sending them to one of our farthest out schools in the district, which I understand you all know, and we're trying to use space and, you know, reserve funds, you know, to upgrade things like that, and that's great, but, you know, my concern is if we have, you know, I'm gonna say grades 8 around there, give or take a couple years, you know, for the farther out schools, if there was a tragedy, a fire in a building, or anything else worse than that, those children are going to know what to do better than your K through 4 kids, your K through 5 kids. Now you have a teacher, I've heard, you know, kindergarten teachers mention it's like wrangling cats, which I agree. I've had little ones or whatnot, but it comes down to now you have the amount of staff out there compared to the amount of students that are there. You know, if you have a bunch of younger children, now they're trying to wrangle coats and everything else to keep these children warm in the middle of the winter. So I just think it's something worth looking at, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Anybody else this evening? Public comment? Right, hearing nobody else. Old business, there is no old business this evening, so we will move on to item number 9 next. 9A is Williston State College Foundation turf presentation, and we will welcome Mr. Hunter Berg here to the mic.
Well, thank you, Mr. Junt, and members of the board. My first time presenting, so I'm a little bit nervous, but to reintroduce myself, my name is Hunter Berg. I'm the Executive Director of the Williston State College Foundation. And I am very excited to present to you and visit with you about what we think is a great project for the Williston Coyotes, the school district, but also for the community in and of itself. I have asked Robert to join me tonight, and he handed out a couple of pieces of information. Just for reference, one is more of a I guess a fundraising brochure that we're presenting to different people to kind of explain how it came about and what the project is. The other one is just the printed PowerPoint that we've got up on the screen here. So I'll reference it, but really all we're taking out is just a couple of pictures out of the sales brochure so you can see kind of what the complex might look like. But the beginnings of this turf project, you know, we think it's a great project. And, you know, just like a lot of the other projects that are being brought forth around town right now, they probably should have been done 10 years ago. And unfortunately, I have to own most of the blame for that. About 12 years ago, as athletic director at the college, a baseball coach, when we built Raybon Field, which is our baseball field, said we should put turf on that field. I said, well, how much is it? $750,000. So I don't think there's any way we could raise that much money. Now, 12 years later, we're probably having to raise 3 times that. So I am very passionate about this project and willing to put whatever work I can to make the dream a reality, so to speak. But the project itself has, how it's gotten to the point where it's at right now, where I'm able to get out and explain it to people and, you know, hopefully start to raise some support for the project is a little less than a year ago, I was sitting in Bismarck, North Dakota on a very, very cold set of bleachers with a good friend of mine from Williston. The field around was covered in snow. And snow piled up 3-4 feet, and we were playing softball on a very, very non-softballish day. But as the first inning rolled around, we looked at each other and we said, we've got to get turf in Williston. And from there, we said, well, let's try to get something going. A couple months later, we gathered a group of interested parties, of potential users of the field that we thought might be willing to say, yes, let's do this project. And the discussions went fairly quickly. It wasn't if we need, it's how quickly can we get this done. And from there, we're putting together additional meetings to say, what is the best way for us to get this done? And what we've got in front of you, and hopefully we can just kind of show it to you, 3 things. What the project could look like if we got this project going. Number 2 is I've asked Robert to really explain what he thinks the advantages to Williston Public School District student athletes would be. And we won't touch much on the community portion of it, but we've been very, very involved with Parks and Rec about, this is a term, the first baseball and softball turf fields in Williston. But there's also other uses for it from the community standpoint that I think we can really call it a community project where everybody's coming together to get this done. I've said before, we as the college, we couldn't do this by ourselves. The school district probably couldn't do this by themselves. And the park district probably couldn't do it by themselves. But if we come together, we believe we can get this done. So in your printed PowerPoint, you'll see the first page is really what the complex, I'm sure most of you have been by the college, but really what the complex looks like today. Cole, can I have you? Thanks, Cole. The baseball field at the college and the softball field at the college exist today. What this project would do would just replace the natural grass surface with artificial turf on both the baseball and the softball fields. Now, additionally, you'll see that there's a small practice area planned outside of those two fields, and that would be so that we could have multiple teams playing and practicing at the same time. That's really what we have now, and the next sketch just kind of shows you what we're kind of dreaming, and it's just, at this point, advanced schematic designing, but we're talking about making this more of a complex. Right now, we have the two fields, but there is no secured fencing. Anybody can walk out on those fields right after this meeting tonight if you wanted to. But with the artificial turf, we know we'd have to secure the complex so that, one, we can now charge admission for the games and prevent just anybody from walking out there at any single time. And we also would add concessions and restrooms, upgrade the grandstands for each field. It's truly, the artificial turf is the centerpiece of this project, but the complex upgrades come along with it. It's a beautiful project. We're awfully proud of it. The next couple drawings are just informational only. I've asked Robert to really explain what this could mean for the school district's student athletes, and really that dovetails with the colleges. We all have, I feel very passionate about our baseball and our softball teams at the college. I know the success of Williston Public Schools and the Keybirds baseball program has been phenomenal through the years. Now this Boom softball program is really taking, I think, the youth fast pitch program to another level. These kids deserve this chance to have artificial turf so we can practice more and play more. It's one of the pieces in one of those sales brochures is that we're one of only 2 Class A communities right now that doesn't have artificial turf baseball and softball fields. And we look forward to a chance to up our game, so to speak. So, Albert?
The number one thing that it does is it provides opportunity. Right now, as all of you know, the weather is not much friend of ours during the spring sports, especially during baseball and softball. It's really hard to get on the fields. We have to reschedule games over and over and over and over again, and it's really hard on our student athletes to go one day to the next, not knowing whether they're going to be able to play or not, having to leave a night before, having to do those different things. And so this project really allows the opportunity for our athletes to be able to get on the field, to be able to practice, to participate. And then you look at the competitive advantage that other schools have over us right now, where they're able to get on their turf fields and practice, as opposed to us, where we have to wait for the snow to melt, the water table to pass, all that stuff. We don't get to get on the fields as much as they do. So we literally have fewer practices than other teams that have turf fields. The other thing too is the relationship that we get to have with the college and with the Parks and Rec. I know it's one thing that we really talked about trying to improve this year and moving forward. And Hunter's done a really good job as far as the planning portion of this. It's not just a couple of people that got together and say, hey, we really want turf. There has been research, there has been a lot of hours that have been spent that have been looking into this project as far as what type of turf, how much it costs, what it looks like compared to other schools, what other schools have and how it looks and how it's worked for them. We've had different experts come in that have said this is what works really well here in this part of the state, this doesn't work. And so we've had several meetings that we've had that we've discussed what we're trying to get here and what we want to get out of the project. And I think it's a really good project for us to go into works with the college and with the Parks and Rec to develop something our community can be proud of. And it's something that our community needs. I know turf baseball fields may sound a little strange, but that's where it's really moving to. And especially with the way that the weather is here, I think it's something that it's going to be money well spent, and it's going to be something that can be utilized throughout the community and throughout more than just athletes that play at the high school. It'll be everyone here that can utilize it.
I know we've tried to be as concise as possible, and I'll stand for any questions, but the last piece is probably the most important part, and what does it cost to put something like this together? And so we've asked for estimates, and JLG has helped us put this estimate together. It's expensive. You know, the turf portion alone is likely to be about $2.5 million, and all the complex upgrades that will go along with it just make that number go higher and higher and higher. But we think it's a worthy project. We're committed to raising the monies to do so. Our foundation somewhat took the lead on this project, and I guess I, as the executive director of the foundation, took the lead. We've committed up to $2 million for this project to make sure it gets off the ground running. But what I'm here today is to ask the school district if you would consider being a part of this project financially. And I know that you have a lot of things going on right now, and it's a lot of things to consider. But anything we can do to help get information to make this a worthy cause for the district to join forces with us is greatly appreciated, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Wheeler.
Okay, I don't play baseball, and I never did, or softball, but I have a lot of family members that do. And I was just curious. Artificial turf is usually hotter, especially in the summertime, and players can overheat faster. Is that a concern? Please.
So it does get a little hotter, but it's not a concern. Back in Texas, where I coached at for a long time, a lot of these schools down there are going turf, and it gets much, much hotter down there. There's not much concern. Obviously, you want to take care of the upkeep of it. You want to make sure that, like you have the machines that fluff the turf and things like that. You want to make sure you take care of that. But as compared to any other surface, it's not significantly hotter to a point where it causes concern. So I don't have any concern about it whatsoever.
Okay. And then I'm going to try to phrase this as best I can, but professional baseball and even college level baseball are still using natural grass. They're using, specialized grass, but they're using natural grass. We have artificial turf, then we're different than colleges and some, correct, that's true, and professional, because like I said, the professionals are typically using real grass. So wouldn't that be confusing?
No.
I'm somewhat ignorant to it, so I do apologize.
No, and that's okay. So it's not out of the box to say that it's safer to have turf, because you do not have the different types of hops, bad hops that could happen. If you have normal grass with the dirt, there's different rocks that can get in there, the lips can get bad, and so you have bad hops, things that are not normal true hops where people get injured. So that's one benefit of the turf. Professional organizations have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars that they dedicate towards the upkeep and care of those facilities, and they're world-class facilities, and it would cost a whole lot of money to be able to be on par with the types of fields that professionals do use. A lot of the colleges there are a number of colleges that have the artificial turf also, because it's cheaper in the long run with having maintenance, water, things like that. So while it wouldn't be the same as professional fields, a lot of the colleges are doing it. There's a lot of high schools that are doing it, and I don't think that it won't be confusing to the players as much. No.
Okay, and then I had just two last questions.
Sure.
What's a hop?
Like the ball that's hit off the bat, ground balls, things like that.
Oh, so when it rolls.
Yeah, but when it's coming really fast and it's got a lot of the different types of hops as it hits the ground, you don't want it to not be a true hop to where it comes up and hits you in the face. That's happened to me a few times. It doesn't feel very good. So it's truer hops, and you're able to anticipate where it's going to be at. Just little things like that are added bonuses that obviously aren't the reason why we would want to have a turf project, but you do have bonuses that come along with it. So that's just one example.
Okay, thanks. And then it's going to be fenced in?
Yes.
So if it's fenced in, then the everyday Joe can't just go play ball.
Right, because it's going to be a beautiful facility that we would want to make sure that we take care of. We wouldn't want, and I may be speaking out of turn, but we wouldn't want people that are going to just walk in without the proper approval to come on and walk their dog and have their dog dig a hole or anything like that. We'd want to make sure that the facility is being used for its proper usage.
Okay, so it's going to sit empty for a long time each
I
year.
wouldn't say it would sit empty. I would say that it would be maintained and the right people that, we're not gonna have people that are gonna drive out there or go out there and tear it up. There would be people that, it's gonna be available for use, but it's gonna be used the right way and taken care of because it's a lot of money and it's a beautiful facility we don't want to have ruined.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for obliging me with my questions.
That's fine.
Mr. Swint?
Just kind of a reference, Mrs. Wheeler, Offutt Stadium stays closed and unused for that specific reason. We have the chance to have the Babe Ruth Little League World Series because that facility is kept secure during the off-season and you're not allowed to play on it. And it's protecting the long-term viability of the facility. One thing I know that we've done, that we're striving for as a school district, is better relationships within the community amongst our other groups, the college, Parks and Rec, and building long-term opportunity for our students to excel at the next level. And these relationships, I believe, are extremely important. Understanding the cost of this, and now we do know financially where the district is, I would like to see these kind of relationships progress and move forward. So I am very much open to continuing this conversation and helping produce a facility that will bring tournaments to our area as well, which is also an influx of money for our facilities.
Yeah, and I'd like to see there's plenty of public baseball fields in Williston the community can use like that. And $2, $3, $4 million really isn't that much money anymore. Have you bought a dozen of eggs lately?
Mr. Casmer, and then we'll go to Ms. Williams. I'll go to Ms. Williams and then Dr. Fadley and then back to Mr. Swint.
I just wanted to know, Mr. Berg, if there was any, or Mr. Conley, whoever would know, if there was any commitment at this point, or you're talking about 3 entities, kind of, you're talking about Parks and Rec, us, and you guys. Are you looking for a split 3 ways? Like, are you just looking for, what the board feels comfortable with? Like, what specifically are you guys looking for?
Ms. Williams, whatever the board feels comfortable with. I'm not expecting this project to be split 3 ways amongst the entities, not even close. Most of these dollars, many of the dollars will be privately raised through businesses, individuals, alumni, etc. So anything that the board feels comfortable with.
Perfect. And the reason I was asking is Mr. Conley would probably be our best person to tell us how many people are going to be utilizing this. So I don't know if it's by a per person basis, and you times that by, I don't know how much maintenance and all that stuff will cost, right? You guys have those figures of all those one-time expenditures and what it would cost to maintain, right? So I would just be interested to see what formula you would come up with Dr. Fadley and, what you guys would come up with just to see, because I am also very interested in helping this. Again, I want to be smart. We want to be good with our money and stuff like that, but always when it benefits our community and our students, that's where I want to spend the money, so.
Dr. Fadley?
So when Mr. Berg and Mr. Heller and Mr. Conley and I met to discuss this, the first step was to take it to the Buildings and Grounds Committee for conversation and forwarding it to the board as a presentation environment to kind of get a gauge on the level of interest. I too am very supportive of developing these partnerships in our community because all of our kids are going to benefit. Our elementary students will benefit because they'll be able to get on the field. Our high school, middle school, all of the little leagues, they will get more opportunities. In my the last time we met, we were talking about the field being, having lights and extending the playtime into the evening in the summer environments where the heat won't be much of a factor. So I see this as a win-win for our school district. I see it as a win-win for our community, Parks and Rec, and the college. And when we do these types of things together, everyone gets to share and have the use of the facility. And I think this is what we should all be about.
Mr. Swint?
My only other question would be, would there be some sort of board oversight where we could guarantee maybe our district athletic director is guaranteed a position going forward on that board overseeing this facility and ensuring that we have some form of guaranteed communication joint powers agreement, something along those lines that would protect the district for future use if we were to move forward?
Mr. Swint, very good question. I think I would ask that same question if I was in your shoes. I can't speak to if there will be a separate board. Is that what you were inquiring about? I can't guarantee that there'd be a separate board that would govern the facility itself. What we have talked about amongst our group is that the last thing we can afford to do is not have a great relationship. And whether it's a memo, an MOU, or some type of joint powers agreement, whatever it might be that that details that, we'd be all in favor of that. I think from your guys' standpoint, to extend a hand and say we'd like to support this project and yet not have maybe some clarification as to are we going to be able to use this facility as much as we'd like to use it, I think is good business on your guys' part. But I can promise you that our college will be very, very good friends of the district. We all just need to get along. This is a great project for the whole community. But I can't guarantee the board, but I feel very confidently we can guarantee you that you will be well represented in anything that goes on there.
Okay, thank you.
Board members, any other questions for Mr. Berg or Mr. Conley?
So are you looking for board action, or what are you looking for?
Well, Ms. Wheeler, I don't know. I don't know how this process works. I wanted to pitch the project and show what it could look like and what it is likely to become. I don't know the next board action, I guess. What would you recommend? What have I not provided to move it further down the road, or?
Put down Dr. Vadely for a personal donation of.
Well, we weren't looking for board action tonight. It was, I think, just
well-
a presentation. I'm sorry, Chris, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the intention this evening was strictly just a presentation, information only for the board. I'm hearing, relatively positive, feedback for at least exploring it further. So if that's, kind of the wishes of the board, I think we could put an actionable item at the next board meeting to explore it further, and it would seem to be reasonable probably to kick this over to personnel and finance from a dollar perspective, and potentially fleshing out a little bit more on what a MOU or a JPA might look like. That's probably more building and grounds on the MOU or JPA, but that would be my recommendation to the board, is to put an actionable item, and then the board can vote at the March 20th meeting on if we want to explore the project further and what steps the board would like to see, if that's the wishes of the board.
So put an action item on the 20th, not to make a motion today, to have it go to personnel and finance to investigate. Wait until the 20th.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for any action this evening.
All right. I'm
Reasonable plan for the board? Or is that- Okay, any other questions for Mr. Berg or Mr. Conley? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, we're about at the 7 o'clock hour. Board members, are you doing all right? You want a 5-minute break quick? We'll take a 5-minute recess and keep you here a little longer. All right, about 7:05-ish. 7:05 PM, and we are on 9B. Administration recommends the approval of the construction documents for the CTE building. This was approved at Building and Grounds meeting on February 28th. What's the board's wishes on this agenda item?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve and a second. Any discussion or comments that you'd like to make this evening on behalf of EAPC or JE Dunn before I open it up to any questions from the board?
I'm Ryan Anderson with JE Dunn, project manager for the CTE edition. And just a reminder of bid package 1 and what it is. So it's, there's items that we call long lead, meaning that they take time to get. Structural steel would be one, air handling units would be one, the electrical panel boards would be one. So that's kind of why bid package 1 was put together, was to help facilitate that end timeline, which is August of 24, and allow time for school to start. So that was kind of the point of bid pack 1 and why you like break that up. So it's about 25 to 30% of the project that's been bid so far. So it's all the earthwork, all the civil items. So any of the dirt moving, any of the digging and backfilling of the concrete foundation, all the site utilities, like concrete foundations are in there with the building slabs, the structural steel and the installation of it, the asphalt paving, and like I mentioned, some of those longer lead mechanical items and electrical items. We have not bid out like actual mechanical and electrical subcontractors. We're just gonna, pending approval, take this and get the material orders going. And then the next step, again, would be March 10th is when the rest of the drawings are gonna be complete, plans and the specifications. And so that's on the agenda too, is going out and bidding for bid package 2. Those drawings and documents will be done from EAPC on March 10th. We're looking at a first week of April bid date, and then 7 to 10 days to go through, figure out what that right timing is with the board meeting. But then that's when the project would be fully bid out, all scopes. So kind of just a high-level overview. So that's all I got.
Ms. Wheeler?
I just have a question for clarifying. We're on 9B, correct, which is the construction?
Correct.
Construction documents, not bid package 1. They're 2 separate items, correct?
They really all kind of flow together. There are 3 separate items, but they all really flow together this evening.
Okay, yeah, but right now we're on 9B, which is construction documents. Has nothing to do with bid package. That's what I'm looking for.
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, good.
Any questions related to item 9B and the motion on the floor? Ashley, let's call the roll on that, please.
Aye. Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 9C is administration's recommendation on the approval of bid pack number 1 bids with an updated cost estimate for the CTE building. This was also approved at Building and Grounds at their meeting on February 28th. What's the board's wishes on this agenda item?
Motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
So right now we are 205,460 over budget, correct?
That is correct. If that's $20 million budget.
Mm-hmm.
So we have kind of one main lever to pull to alleviate that, which would be lowering the height of the CTE lab. It's worth about that much, $207,000. So we're holding that as a bid alternate. So if bids come in, going back to bid package 1, 25 to 30% of the project has been bid. So that means only 70 to 75% of the project is still being estimated. So when bids come in for the rest of it, if bids come in favorable and we don't have to pull that lever, and we can get that $205,000 down with bids, that would be the preferred path. If bids come in more on budget than under budget, then we would, recommend that if the overarching consensus is to stay within the 20 million, and it's more important to stay within the 20 million than it is to have the height of that CTE lab to build those modular homes indoors, then that would be the way to get to the 20 million. So we have a path to get there. We have to kind of hold it there because we have to wait for the bids to come in. But does that answer your question?
It does, it does. I'm just, and I've voiced this concern before, that we're over budget. And we don't even have all of our bids yet. And I just have concerns that we're going to be extremely over budget. And then we're going to take away from what the complex is supposed to be.
Dr. Faley?
I just wanted to clarify, in that budget analysis, does that include the $153,000 grant from the First State Glenn Perkins Foundation? So we did receive a $153,000 grant for CTE supplies or equipment that that we've already been awarded. And then we have another grant that's pending that we should know the month of March for $500,000 that we wrote with, it's the EDA grant, which we wrote with the Tri-County and the city of Williston. So there's a potential for another $500,000. And with that 153,000, we're pretty close to being on budget, about 50,000 over at this point. But if we get that 500, we'll be under budget.
That is correct. I will point, Paul, if you want to scroll to where the soft costs are at. I'm not seeing them.
Did my screen freeze?
What item number is it?
Should be soft costs are related to the form.
I don't see it on the screen.
Here, let me try something.
What item number is the soft cost?
Hold on.
Oh, there it is, number 10. Can you see it at the bottom there?
There we go.
Yes, so $725,000 is being carried in the total project budget, but not within J.E. Dunn's estimate for fixtures, furnitures, and equipment. So like Dr. Faley was saying, $500,000 could potentially offset that $725,000. We have $170,000 worth of equipment in our budget for just things that aren't in that $725,000. Smart boards, the kitchen equipment is in that $725,000. There's probably like 3 line items that is the $170,000 worth of equipment. So that's already being offset by the $153,000. But just want to say that, there's significant amounts of fixtures, furnitures, and equipment in the budget that are looking to be offset by grants, which then takes it back down under budget.
Any other questions from the board?
Ms. Wheeler, I don't want to negate your concerns or questions, nor any that the taxpayers might have. I just don't want us to have a legacy of underbuilding and regretting that we didn't build more. We're in a situation now where we're dealing with student growth. We had another floor to the Bakken Elementary School because we need more space. And it's been my experience just listening to people, it always takes longer to build, costs more to build. And It's just a bigger project, so you never want to underbuild. And I think we look now at our high school facility and wish that was bigger. We look at our middle school, wish that was bigger. So I don't want to leave a legacy that we underbuilt and regret that 10, 20 years down the road. That's going to be insignificant. So I want to make sure that we're building adequately, and it's always that delicate balance between meeting the needs and balancing the budget. So I appreciate your comments.
Yep, and I was there with those projects, so I do understand that. I just keep going back to what we promised our taxpayers. We promised them 20,000 or 20 million, and we're over that. And I just want to make sure that we are getting as close to that dollar amount that we promised as possible. Otherwise, we need to possibly reevaluate the project and add more money to it at a board level. I just don't want us keep continuing going back and saying, oh, it's this much more. Oh, it's this much more. We didn't get this grant, so now it's this much more.
Approximately how much each year do building costs increase? I don't remember the percentage anymore, but the longer we delay, we keep going in the hole. Am I
Yeah.
correct?
So this particular project, since we first did the initial conceptual estimate, escalation and inflation has been 21%, which is a number that nobody could have predicted. Typical prior to pandemic was about 1.25% per quarter, so roughly 4% a year. Now, I just want to address that comment about if we get the grants, it's going to get us back under budget. And if a decision wants to be made to raise the budget to, like, let's use that CTE, height of that CTE lab, for example. That's something that when the bids come in, we can say, hey, you know, the bids didn't come in enough under budget to get the project under 20 million. There's still that opportunity to raise the budget. So my personal opinion, the budget doesn't need to be raised today because all the square footage, all the program, we've worked really hard, us and EAPC and the building committee have made a lot of really smart decisions to overcome 21% inflation and yet keep the project program intact. So I'm hoping we don't have to go over the 20 million. That's what I'm hoping for. But I hope the public understands the 21% and what's the work that's been done to keep the program intact. Because currently we're not under building. We do have an additive bid alternate that's not included in the 20 million to finish out the CTE, existing CTE building. So, that's a good avenue to potentially raise the budget to get that done, or that can be done later type of thing. There is, I believe, some legislation going on for escalation offset. So see how that goes, but I don't think today we need to raise the budget.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I just wanted to tell you guys thank you again for being here in public and letting us see you guys and answer our questions. It really does just, it's a big project. Sometimes, like with these types of questions, it's just nice to have you guys here to just be able to see your face, feel your emotions, feel your, the energy that you don't seem that stressed, so we shouldn't, so it's very important for me that, and I always appreciate when Mr. Swint asks for that because I think it's made a big difference since then. So thank you, and again, just to say great to Mr. Wallstead and Mr. Wallstead and Mrs. Wheeler. I see both sides of the coin, but I'm also willing to kind of see where we're going with this, where legislation ends up, because it's not just the inflation costs. They're also talking about low interest loans and all those types of things that can help a school district. So we just don't know where it's going to end up, where we can actually, if we do need to extend our budget, do that. So not too stressed quite yet. So.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else? I will speak just real briefly to the escalator legislation on the House side and the appropriations. The $40 million allocation in the state CTE budget was removed on House appropriations side. What I've heard is they want to see the final revenue update from the state forecast here in March. And then the Senate appropriations will make a recommendation based off of that final revenue forecast at the state level. I think there's support on the Senate side for adding that escalator back in on the Senate appropriations side, and then it'll end up being in a conference committee between the House and the Senate at the end. So just thought that was worthy for the board to have that information. If there's nothing further, let's call the roll on the motion on the floor.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. 9D would be administration's recommendation to approve of bid packet number 2 to go out for bid for the CTE building. This again was approved by the Building and Grounds Committee on February 28th. What's the board's wishes on this agenda item?
Mr. Chairman, I'd recommend to approve the bid packet number 2.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, let's call the roll on that, Ashley.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
9E is administration's recommendation of approval of the bid for the CTE building network infrastructure equipment according to the E-rate guidelines. This information is attached in board book and also was emailed out to board members earlier today. What's the board's wishes on this agenda item?
Mr. Chairman, I'd recommend to approve the bid for the CET building network infrastructure.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any questions or discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Yes.
Aye, motion carries. 9F is administration's recommendation to approve the teacher contract for Emily Page for the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year. What's the board's wishes?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the teacher contract for Emily Page.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll on that, please.
Aye.
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 Yes.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 9G, administration's recommendation of approval of the retirement of Laura Olson. What's the board's wishes?
I'll move we approve the retirement of Laura Olson.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Dr. Fadley.
I just want to publicly thank Laura for her 12 years of service to the Williston community and wish her well on her next journey in life. Thank you for impacting so many children.
Ms. Wheeler?
Yes, I
Oh,
just wanted.
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, are you sure?
Yep.
I just wanted to mimic that as well because she worked with both of my daughters, so she'll be missed.
Ms. Williams?
Yeah, just wanted to say the same thing. So excited when our teachers finally get to enjoy their retirement and get to spend time with their families and the people that they work the hardest to support and get to go finally enjoy those moments. So I wish her the best of luck.
Anyone else? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 9H is administration's recommendation of approving the resignation of Jody Wolf, and this appears to be at the end of the contract period for this school year. What's the board's wishes?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a second? Second, any discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll on that, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 9I, administration's recommendation of approving the memorandum of understanding with Milestone Health Partners. Copy of the proposed MOU is in your board book. What's the board's wishes on this agenda item?
Move to approve the memorandum with Milestone Health.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Renner. Any discussion?
I just want to say that there are other districts in our surrounding area that have similar contracts with Milestone Health, and they have seen tremendous benefits with their students who need these services, and they've been extremely beneficial to families as well. Having the service provided in a school environment is extremely beneficial to the child and their teacher.
Anybody else? Ashley, let's go ahead and call the roll on this one, please.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
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 I'll abstain. 9J, administration's recommendation of the approval of the memorandum of understanding with the Coyote Foundation. This was approved at the Building and Grounds Committee meeting on February 28th. Copy of that MOU is in your board book. What's the board's wishes on this item?
Move to approve the memorandum with Coyote Foundation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
This was an ask of Dr. Fadley previously during our conversations and wondering what that relationship would be going forward. I appreciate you getting this done and working with legal to make sure the district is protected and we get to continue a great relationship with the Coyote Foundation.
Yes, also wanted to add in that, this was something that we love having those relationships with these types of organizations. And 2 weeks ago, that presentation was just an example of why we have this partnership with them. So I also am with Mr. Swint, though. I like to be able to protect the district, make sure that we have processes and procedures in place that no matter who's in those positions moving forward, it's consistent and everyone knows what we get and what they get. So appreciate you guys taking the time to build this. So thank you.
Just a point to note that in the resolution, they may want to correct in there the WFC to WCF, beginning with number 1, 2, and on down the line, and that's in the resolution. I just think they have their letters mixed up in there, so just a clerical note on that.
Any other questions or comments? Ashley, let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. 9K is administration's recommendation of the approval of the deferred maintenance project and to enter into a contract with JLG as recommended by Personnel and Finance. This was approved at their meeting on February 27th, and the funding source would be ESSER $3. What's the board's wishes on this agenda item? Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Dr. Fadley?
I just want to clarify that there will also be a contract coming forward after JLG goes through the process of doing the postings for the construction manager at risk.
Ms. Williams?
Yeah, just also wanted to kind of say again, thank you guys for doing this. This has been, I think, Mr. Renner, you were the chair when we were really looking for some of these distinct, breakdowns and when we're going to start. And I just appreciate you guys working so hard to finally get us to a place where we can see when it's starting, what's starting, how much it's cost, the bidding process. And it really does give at least me an idea and hopefully the building admins to know it's coming. It's not anymore being talked about. This will be starting once we're able. So really excited to see some of these deferred maintenance projects go into place.
Yep, definitely. But I don't think that I can take credit for that or Mr. Swint. It'd be Dr. Fadley and his team. So thank you.
Well, yeah, all of the above, all of you guys doing this. And again, it's been a year process with a lot of people in place. So again, just everybody and just a lot of these financial things that have been coming down, the memorandums of understanding, all that. It's just been a lot of people just taking into conversation and consideration and doing what's best. So it's really exciting to see this stuff. So thank you guys.
Any other questions or comments? Ashley, let's go ahead and call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Yes.
Aye, motion carries. 9L is administration's recommendation to renew the contract with LiveScan. Copy of that proposal is listed in board book. What's the board's wishes on this agenda item?
I'd move to approve the renewal of the contract with LiveScan.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Renner. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
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 Yes.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 9M is administration's recommendation of the approval of the Cobra proposal. This was approved by the Personnel and Finance Committee on their February 27th meeting. A copy of that proposal is attached in board book. What's the board's wishes on this item?
I'll move we approve the Cobra proposal.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallstead. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, let's call the roll on that, Ashley.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 9N is administration's recommendation of the approval of the contract with Dr. Shriver. A copy of that proposed contract has been attached in board book. What's the board's wishes on this agenda item?
I'll move we approve the contract with Dr. Shriver.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallstead. Any questions or discussion?
I just think this is a wonderful thing, getting support for the teachers to help deal with some of the challenges they deal with. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think anything that gets in-person training, we've looked at doing this through the technology department. We've looked at doing it through the admin office. I read in the update, so I think anytime we could get in-person training with experts and not have it always necessarily have to be our employees, because sometimes they need to be trained as well a little bit more, it opens that up. So this is a great thing. And I also like how it says this agreement does not create a partnership or joint enterprise. It's just for that thing. So.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that this was, as part of my travels around the district and meeting with individual staff, this request came out of McVeigh Elementary School to have some assistance with some of the challenging behaviors that exist there. And they specifically requested this individual because of the other staff in the district that had spoken highly of what progress that they were able to see with some of the behaviors at their schools. So this was a staff request from one of those meetings.
Thank you, Dr. Fadley. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Wheeler?
I need to know whether or not I have a conflict in this situation. I need direction.
Okay, can you give us any more information?
How many contracts have we had with Mrs. Shriver in the district?
To my knowledge, there have been 2 others.
Okay, and how was she contracted with us?
Dr. Shriver has her own company, LLC, and she's been contracted with directly from that company.
Okay, and any other contracts that she has currently or past held that could be conceived as a conflict?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
This is an additional contract specifically for McVeigh Elementary.
Okay, so this is only for McVeigh, no other schools?
That is correct. This particular contract on the agenda tonight is for McVeigh Elementary.
And this one's for 12 days for $31,000. Her previous contract, what was that breakdown?
That was for the remainder of the district, and I believe that dollar figure was around $180,000.
Okay. And then this contract is going to have her it says it's travel and hotel and food is all inclusive. Is that included in the 31,000 or is that separate from it? I just want to clarify what the all inclusive means.
I believe this particular contract, let me get to that section. I think it's all inclusive, so that would mean that all of those were included in the price of the contract. It's my understanding, but let me look at the contract again to refresh myself.
Yes, please. And then I have one follow-up question after you do that.
So the travel, hotel, and food are all inclusive at the designated price for the on-site trainings equivalent to 12 days at $31,000.
Okay, and then is she setting up her travel or are we?
Typically, when it's an all-inclusive, she does the travel arrangements.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to stop asking questions.
I'm not clear on the question in terms of conflict, but I would just say if you think you have a conflict and feel that you should abstain, then I would advise that you abstain without asking for more information, because I'm not sure on what the conflict was based off of those questions.
In reference to Wilmac in previous contracts. So I think under the circumstances, it may be best for me to abstain.
Ms. Williams?
Yeah, just $31,000, 12 days work, reading what it does, 12-day behavioral support and training for McVeigh Elementary focused on classroom management and staff training for the implementation of behavior plans and interventions within the classroom and overall school setting. So I think it's valid. I think it's worth it. Obviously I'm not an expert on this stuff, so I don't know specifically how much we've paid in the past and stuff, but I would like to know, how do you gauge if it helped, or is there something that we could get maybe after the fact that shows if there's been behavioral drops, so maybe we could utilize that for other schools and be proactive with this? Or
Yeah, she has currently worked with our other elementary schools, and most of the positive comments about things working have come from classroom teachers and administrators in the building. So certainly we could put together something for the board.
yeah, just love to see how those things work once you spend the money on them. So thank you.
Dr. Feedley, can you speak to the funding source? Is this funded through one of the title programs?
This is funded through the McVeigh TSI funds that come from the state targeted school improvement funds. So it's not coming from the general budget. It's coming from the state targeted school improvement funds that are allocated to McVeigh.
Thank you. Any other, Mr. Swint?
My only question is just related to, has legal counsel reviewed this document and approved it?
Yes.
Any other questions? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Abstain?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 9-0 is administration's recommendation of approving the contract renewal with Frontline Education. This was approved at the Personnel and Finance Committee meeting on February 27th. What's the board's wishes on this item?
I would move to renew the contract renewal with Frontline Education.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Casmer on the second. Any questions or discussion? All right, Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. 9P is the Personnel and Finance Committee's recommendation of a do not pass on the forensic audit proposals. Board really has two options here. One would be to concur with the recommendation of the Personnel and Finance Committee as their motion, or the alternative would be to recommend going forward with one of the proposals as presented. So I will open the floor to a motion here before we entertain discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to concur with the Personnel and Finance Committee, recommending a do not pass on the forensic audit.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, second by Mr. Cansmer. Questions or discussion?
I, for one, as a board member, feel that there should be more evaluation of this, more clarification on scope of what we may want and pricing in that arena. I'm not comfortable with what we were presented here as a no pass. I feel one conversation at Personnel and Finance is not enough, and that we need to be very clear with our community that we are willing to look at and discuss this item in more detail than what we've been presented with here today.
Ms. Wheeler?
I would agree with Mr. Swint, just based on comments from the public at large, not just today, but in the past, that they've made from the podium. They're not just looking in regards to the 318,000 plus, as indicated in the email correspondence between Mr. Anderson and the various companies. So I think a much broader scope needs to be looked at, as been requested by the public. It's our due diligence to provide that to them.
Ms. Williams?
Yeah, I'm kind of actually on the opposite end of this. You know, I'm all for, to a point, trying to figure out what's happened and all that, but that's also what the audit was for. And the state made it very clear that if we go for a forensic audit, we're going for criminal activity. And that's something that we have to understand, that's what a forensic is. It's so that they have the ability to go into bank accounts and stuff. And again, I'm not here to say there was or there wasn't something like that needs to be done. But I'm also at that point in my board life that at what point do we stop talking about the past and really, really, really focus on the future and the present? And the 318,000, my question is, what other amount is there to go after? The audit company made it very clear that a lot of the issues that existed in District 1 was a lack of processes, procedures, and honestly, a lack of leadership from the top down. Superintendent, business manager, chair. So, you know, if we want to get down to where this all got messed up, we're going back 10 years, maybe. That's just where they stopped, you know, or 2015. So we're asking this audit company to go until we find out where it was a zero balance. At what point do we say 2 million, 3 million, $1 million for 318,000? Dr. Fadley has put in his corrective action plan that's been approved by the state auditor. They said it was valid, it was thoughtful. They told us that we were one of the most helpful districts that they'd ever worked with. And this is coming off of last year hearing that the audit company for District 1 was about to drop them in that year due to a lack of working together and all that. So to me, we've done our due diligence. We were starting the audit company. The public wanted to take over and have it through the state, which I admire and I respect. But then at what point do we now move on? And at what point do we now start talking about where else we want to spend money? And where I want to spend money is on schools. It's on staff. It's on students. It's not on money situations from the past that until we can see at least 2 to 3 years with Dr. Fadley, Mr. Anderson, and this board's new way of doing business, we're just talking about the past because it's not the same people. So to me, it's a waste of money. I do feel like I've given the public their due diligence, and to say that we never listen, I feel like we are constantly adjusting and readjusting, and we're at a point where there's some people that will just see what they want to see. No matter what we do, no matter what we adjust, we're never going to be doing what's right. We're never going to be doing what they want. But at what point do we just say, enough is enough? And the state has told us, we have told us, and now it's our job to move on. And we set the tone. And it's not to say that I'm not irritated. It's not to say that I don't want to know where all that money is or, got put to 318, but it's not missing. It's just unaccounted for. And there is a huge difference for that. So I'd love to hear the rest of the board, but again, I'm here to build schools, I'm here to pay our employees better, and I'm here to give our students a really good educational experience. I do not feel like I'm judge, jury, and executioner on this. That was the public's due diligence for the last 7 years of mismanaged funds.
Go to Dr. Fadley next, and then I'll give every board member an opportunity to speak first, and then I'll come back to you, Mr. Swint, okay?
So the state audit, the petition audit, spent over 1,000 hours of auditor time at a cost of $131,000 to demonstrate to us that there were not a lack of process and there was a lack of procedures and internal controls that existed in the district. And they audited the 2020-2021 school year. We have also contracted with Brady Martz to assist us with some of the reconciliation issues that we know exist, dating back to how many years we don't know. And they got to a point where they were unable to move forward because of the complexities and the long-standing issues with the district general ledger and bank accounts not reconciling, which they should on a monthly basis. So I'll just share those two pieces of facts with the board. And typically my understanding of a forensic audit is it is much more comprehensive than a single audit, which is what the state performed. So knowing that, I think we're talking about expending a lot more than 131 additional thousands of dollars to get to a result that we don't know we're going to have any more information than what we had before. So I'm on the side of, at least from my perspective, at what point in time do we allocate the funds that we're spending back into the classrooms for the children and move on into the future and get some of the things accomplished that need to be accomplished in the school district, like deferred maintenance, like going out and asking the community to build additional classroom space, not because we want it, but because we need it for the children in our community. So that's where I align, and I think, you know, you can spend a lot of money to find out nothing.
Mr. Wallstead, any questions or comments that you have?
To me, it always boils down to intent and motive. What is the intent and the motive of doing a forensic audit? If it is to find opportunity for a lynching, that's not a good motive. At the same time, it comes down to intent and motive of the board. If we support a do not pass on this and don't do a forensic audit, what's our intent and what's our motive? And if we're trying to cover up something, well then shame on us. But I don't believe we are. Corrective action has been taken, and all parties involved in whatever occurred in the last decade or 20 years, we don't know how long. We don't know the motive and intent of those individuals, nor are they on the payroll anymore. So I think for community members, for board members, we always have to analyze and be honest with our intent and motive for why we take the actions that we take. So that's where I stand on the whole thing. So I understand the concerns of board members here and wanting to be supportive of community concerns over the monies. But I don't believe, and I like to give people the benefit of the doubt until I know otherwise. I want to believe the best in our community members who participated in the leadership of our school in the past. And I want to believe the best in the faculty and staff that are involved with our students' education in the future. So I don't know if doing a forensic audit is going to do anybody any good. So that's where I'm at. Intent and motive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Renner?
My question was, so the 317,000, I believe it is, that was federal money that was given to us. And there wasn't proper documentation on how it was spent. That's my understanding, and there might be the potential that we'd have to pay it back if if the federal government requested it. So would a forensic audit provide that documentation that the federal government would need in case it was ever audited? Or, I mean, how did you guys come to this conclusion that it wasn't worth it, it just too expensive, you thought, or?
I'll wait till last just because I'm the chair, so I'll circle back to my thoughts, I guess, on what a forensic audit entails. Do you have anything you want to add right now, Dr. Fadley?
So if I understand your question, Mr. Renner, is there any guarantee that we're going to have to pay it back or not pay it back?
Well, I was wondering if we did a forensic audit, would that provide the documentation that we needed for the federal government in case they requested that at some point?
I don't know that I can answer that question because if the documents don't exist and if they weren't secured, so to say, I don't know what a forensic audit would find. It very well could find some documents, but I don't know what it would uncover that we don't already know.
Anything additional, Mr. Renner, before I go to Mr. Casper?
No, I'm just glad that we at least put this on the agenda to discuss. So, as far as, I'll take the committee's recommendation. As far as I'm concerned, this matter is closed.
Mr. Casper?
Well, I think one of the main reasons for a do not pass is I don't think we'll find out any more than what the state gave us. And we could spend upward to maybe twice as much as what it cost the state. And they might not have found anything else. I think the state was very thorough in doing it, and I don't think we're going to find out anything else. And I think it's all about money, or, I think what the public wants to know is who did something wrong or whatever did something wrong, and I'm not sure. I mean, you can look into some of those things and find out, or we can have somebody look into that a little bit, but the forensic audit is going to be basically about the finances. And again, I don't think they're going to find anything more than the state did. And I've been through a forensic audit before. It's just, it's brutal. Not only are they going to charge us this kind of money, they're going to tie up our people that work for us for a long time. The staff is going to be, bringing them information, questions, just like they did the state. So I just think it's not worth it to go backwards when we're trying to go forward. And I just don't think it's worth it.
Mr. Swin?
So in my statements, what I'm looking for is a request of the scope that the community has requested, to provide a dollar amount that would be sufficient enough for the community to look at that and say, do I spend $1 million trying to find $300,000? Or do I look and say that $1 million belongs in my classroom? And I would expect that the community would say, when they're presented with the scope of a project in the amount that they're looking for, that they as a community would turn back and say, I'm satisfied with the answer I have received. If I have further questions, I can discuss with the state. We're going to be audited again. But to present bids for this project that are below that scope and not giving real answers under one meeting with zero real conversation on what this could look like, I thought going into this evening, when we originally requested that an item like this be placed onto the agenda, that we would have a discussion in scope that we would request, and that we would be giving answers to, hey, this is what we're seeking. Instead, on the agenda, we're given a no pass on a forensic audit proposal that we have not as a board discussed. It was discussed in personnel finance. I was looking for greater detail I don't think we should perform a forensic audit because of the cost, but I believe we're giving the community a very minimal answer in this. I don't believe we're going to find what happened to $317,000, but I do believe that giving the community more detailed information is what we owe them as a board. That is not going backwards. That's going forward and moving forward as a group. That's my position on this. I believe that what we're doing tonight by passing a no pass is short-sighted. And that is where I sit on this subject. I think we should have a more detailed document and conversation than these three items that ask for very minimal of an audit.
Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Swin. What sort of outline of a scope would you be looking for as a board member compared to what was presented?
A more detailed conversation from this board to decide scope as a board, not as an individual or just a committee. This is something that has taken this district for a year to go through. We've looked for the audit on this for a while, and we're going to end at an answer of, you were presented an audit by the state, that's what you're going to get, that's what we're willing to spend our money on. That is the extent of it, and as far as we see as a board, that's the end. I don't believe that's the end, and I believe that a scope that the board defines is what I would like, not just a, here we go, we'll discuss $317,000. I think there's more to this. I don't believe that we had people stealing money. I think that would be an inaccurate statement by anybody. I do think that the community deserves a scope in range that could at least answer their questions when it comes to what is the real cost to this district. And I think it takes this board to decide that. I don't think one board member can pick that out, Mr. Junt. I think it takes all of us to look at what that scope is. Now, from what I'm hearing this evening from the rest of the board members is that this is enough, and this is their hey, we've listened, we put it on an agenda, and that's the end of it.
Thank you. I'll just add my comments here. The state auditor's office, as Dr. Fadley indicated, spent, I think, in excess of 1,000 hours, as quoted by Mr. Gallion, at a cost to the district of $131,000 and change. That was for a 1-year period. If we were to look at a scope of 2 years, or back to 2015, I think they were quoted as looking back to on some of the reconciliation documents when they gave their presentation here. We're talking 8 years worth of time. I am not supportive of spending dollars within the district that can be allocated towards classrooms, towards staff members, towards students, which to me could very easily approach several hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. Many of the individuals clamoring for a forensic audit is the same group that didn't trust these private accounting firms to do the regular single audit. They made comments that those accounting firms may be biased in their analysis of the district. To my knowledge, the state auditor's office does not do a forensic audit, so that's not an option. So I find it rather ironic that now they would be okay with us having a private accounting firm do a forensic audit when they didn't trust them to do the regular audit. I'm a hard no on this. I think we're spending money to a tunnel of nowhere. I specifically asked Mr. Gallion and his team during the exit if they could point to any specific instance that they suspected fraud, to which they answered they could not say yes or no. Typically, you will not engage in a forensic audit unless you have strong suspicions that there has been fraudulent activity that has occurred within the district, and I haven't been provided any evidence to that effect. So I'm fully supportive of this do not pass motion for those reasons. Any other questions or discussion amongst the board?
I actually was one of the board members that asked to put this on, and I definitely respect, Mr. Swint, where you're standing, where you think that, you know, it went through personnel and finance, and then it came to us, and now we don't get a chance. But, you know, looking at what the understanding the scopes and the conditions on page 3, it's pretty specific of what we ask for if we were to do a forensic audit. And, you know, just looking at some of their pays of what they charge, you know, if you start getting into leadership of, you know, $375 an hour, all this stuff, I mean, 1,000 hours, 100 hours, you're already past, you know, or, you know, you're just getting past what we're even looking for at this point. So that's where I'm saying, like, you know, if we didn't have a corrective action plan in place, if we didn't have a new superintendent in place, if we didn't have a new business manager in place, if we haven't even said out loud there's a problem, I wouldn't be comfortable right now. But I feel like we have said out loud, we're aware there's a problem. We aware that we were part of the problem at points, not even realizing we were part of the problem. So I guess that's my question is, you know, what else are we supposed to do? If people want to blame me, if they want to blame this board, you know, for all these issues, that's I'll take it, and I'll apologize, and I'll try to do my best moving forward. But then what? Are they still going to vote on a bond for students that need space? Or are they going to hold Dr. Fadley accountable? Or are they going to hold Chairman Jun accountable? Or because they don't like me, they're going to vote no because I didn't go for an audit today? You know, and this is where it's not just about always listening to what the public wants, because it is, but we also have to weigh both sides of giving what the public wants in this situation. Does that mean that they're going to feel heard, understood? They're going to sit there and say, that board listened to us, they did this, they did that, we're going to vote yes for those kids. Me personally, I don't feel that way on some people. I think some people are a no until some of us get off this board. And doing an audit, firing whoever you want, getting rid of whoever you want, kicking whoever you want off the board is never going to change their opinion. So to me, it's time to move on and start spending money on the right stuff. And that is no disrespect to the people that want the forensic audit, but at some point, somebody's got to stand up and say, enough, we've got to move on. I'll take the hits, but please vote yes for kids in the future. That's all I ask, so.
I'll just add one other thing. I think the term public is being used very loosely this evening. I've been contacted by far more individuals than have voiced support for the board looking for a forensic audit that support us not doing it. So to say that the public is asking for a forensic audit, I think is very loosely defined. And are we defining that as the majority of the public or a handful of people that have shown up and provided public comment to that effect?
I just have one final thought. When there are allegations or suspicions against someone else, we want justice. But when the suspicions and allegations are against us, we want mercy.
Ms. Wheeler, did you have another question or comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on your comment. I also have gotten a lot of people who have said they do not want a forensic audit. They do not want a forensic audit. And I have gotten a number of people who say that they do. So, but we've had a number of people stand up at that podium and say they want a forensic audit, and very few people have stood at that podium and say they do not. So that statement that I had made was in reference to this specific room, not phone calls or emails or things of that nature. It was very narrow in its representation. And I still think that we need to do it.
Last call. Any further questions or comments?
I guess I just have a question. Mr. Swint and Mrs. Wheeler, is there anything outside of a forensic audit that we could get more information on that you guys feel like, you know, because the forensic audit, again, is more like to go into bank accounts, that type of stuff. But is there something specific that you guys are hearing from your constituents and people that this is this one item we want to know whose code was used the most in all these mistakes? Is it, you know, what is it that people are specifically asking for?
I'll go first. I haven't had anyone specifically ask for that, about whose code was used. I mean, probably a few, but not anything noteworthy. It's more along the lines of, similar to Mr. Renner's comment. There's potential money that was used incorrectly, and there's the possibility of that money having to be paid back. Now, I understand that there's statements by the state that those documents don't exist, and I get that, but that is one of the biggest questions. There's a huge chunk of money that was not properly documented and possibly not properly allocated. And there are suspicions that that had happened in the past. If ever there was an issue, this is the perfect time for the state to come in and go, oh, you did this wrong, now you have to pay X amount of dollars, or the Fed. That is one of my biggest concerns. It has nothing to do with who was in the office 2 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago. It has nothing to do with those pieces. It's more of that tangible, this money was misallocated, and now we need to figure out where it went and how it was used so that we can back up why it was used, if that makes sense. It's not to assign blame. It's not to smack someone on the hand and say you've done wrong, and it's certainly not to go after someone for criminal, unless, of course, that is found, but I think that's very unlikely. Am I for a forensic audit or not? Personally, I haven't made a determination on a personal level. I'm just going off of the information that I'm gathering from the public and what their specific concerns are, and just trying to listen to those and express those to the best of my ability within a scope that is reasonable and rational.
Dr. Fadley?
So I'm going to try to give some perspective to my thoughts. So the state auditors came in and they identified 21 or 22 findings. And of those findings, they asked for a corrective action plan. So I'm speaking to all of the items with the exception of the $317,000 issue. All of those items that they found to be deficient were put together in a corrective action plan submitted to the state auditor's office, accepted by the state auditor's office for us to move forward on what their findings were. So we're really talking about $318,000, if I understand correctly. So all of the corrective action items for everything else have been presented and measures are in place with Mr. Anderson and myself moving forward. So all of the conversation that's occurred this evening, I think has to do with what is investing another set of dollars going to do to uncover, if we're just talking about the 1 year, to uncover that one issue. If we're talking about more than 1 year, then we may have all kinds of other issues that come to the forefront. Because remember, they were just dealing with 2020, 2021. If we go back to 2015, a forensic audit group may say, well, we need 5,000 hours or 10,000 hours to uncover multiple years. So back to my original comment about how much money do we want to spend and take away from children to identify what we already know, that we had processes and procedures that were non-existent and not in place, which are now in place moving forward.
All right, last call. Any other further discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Yes.
No.
Aye.
No.
Aye, motion carries. 9P is potential board action to amend the district strategic plan and long-range facilities plan. A copy of the proposed amendment has been included in the board book. This was a request to add to the agenda by Mr. Swint. And the language, I'll just read it for those listening. All changes related to facilities use and grade configurations must receive a final approval by board action vote. That is the language to be under consideration here this evening as an amendment to the district strategic plan and long-range facilities plan. What is the board's wishes on this item?
Motion to approve as presented.
Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Wheeler. Discussion.
I want to thank Mr. Swint for bringing this forward. I think this is a very good idea. We've had a lot of people have a lot of questions. By adding this change to our strategic plan, hopefully it will ensure that even more information goes out. The board, myself, I get blindsided sometimes not knowing what's going on, finding out information at the same time as the public, and that can be disturbing at times and disheartening. So ensuring that the board is able to decide how our buildings are going to be used, I think is very important. And when you look at Century Code, it says in there that the board does have the right to decide how buildings are going to be used, how they're going to be configured. So I believe that this needs to come back to us, just for that second piece.
Mr. Wallstead?
I just have a concern that we're going to get in the kabuki grass, that we're going to get micromanagerial over all of this. And you understand we are about to enter into a board governance model for our board. And if we get into board governance, that is contradictory to something like this. And I just think it's a lesson learned. We have a new administrator and this board, and we're getting to know one another. So I think if there's adequate communication along the line, we don't have to be so micromanagerial in process. So I just have my concerns about this. I want to be in the know as well, but I don't want to make decisions because I have no clue about Wilkinson Elementary School and how it's used now in every classroom, nor will I know every one of our facilities. So I don't know if I want to be in the know on all of those things. There comes a time when I know my boundaries and limitations.
Go to Mr. Swint and then Mr. Casmer next. Mr. Swint. Okay, we'll go to Mr. Casmer and then Mr. Swint.
I feel the same way. I think this is micromanaging. I hired a superintendent to make those decisions along with his staff, and I just think that we are getting into the weeds here and stepping over our bounds. I think we do. If we want to know things, I mean, we can go talk to, his door's always been open. I think it's I think his door's been open to the public. More information has been given out by this man than I've ever seen any superintendent give. And I think we ought to look at ourselves to why we, change superintendents a lot. That we have been micromanaging in the past, and we don't need to do that.
Mr. Swint?
Under Century Code, we're given this power, and handing that over is not an issue of giving away power that we are afforded as elected officials, or necessarily trusting. It's ensuring that our communications, that we're being communicated to in a timely manner, that things aren't suddenly rapidly changing without the board being apprised of those situations. The blowback that we've seen at no point during the forming of the strategic plan or the long-range facilities plan was it ever communicated that we as a board would hand over the ability to make decisions at the end. And ensuring that we're getting these communications doesn't mean that we are denying or declining what our administrators feel is best. It's an assurance that the communication occurred leading up to the situation. Handing away that power says he doesn't have to communicate. Can we trust that he should? Yes. Does it guarantee that he will? It does not. And that is what we have to choose. Do we hand away a power that we have a right as duly elected officials to utilize and ensure the communication is happening between staff, us as a board understanding the direction of the district and what's happening? I think handing that power away is very dangerous. It is a communication tool that we have. When it comes to things happening in the classroom, we as a board have leaned on the side of supporting our superintendent. It doesn't mean that we just give a key and say, here you go do everything. It makes sure that we have an opportunity to see the plan in its entirety, that it's communicated to the community in its entirety. And a lot of the strategic planning and through the facilities plans, it was communicated to us that were in part of that, was that it would take a time for these things to happen. And in this instance, with what was coming, and I give Dr. Fadley kudos for the fact that he's had feedback and he's altered things that he's doing, but the situation that we ran into was the lack of communication on the direction and path we were going. So for me, I as a board member don't want to hand away that power that I was elected to have.
We'll go around and then we'll circle back for questions. So, Ms. Wheeler, have we heard from you yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Williams?
Yeah, I just kind of want to talk to everybody. I think everybody's right on all ends on this, because what I've kind of noticed on this board, you know, especially after 2 weeks ago, Mr. Casmer, you weren't here, but 2 weeks ago when I asked my question about how everybody felt about who voted and what, the two people that felt the most comfortable with not voting are the two people that sat on the strategic plan committee, which has happened time and time again in the past few years. People that have sat on building and grounds feel really comfortable with how the building and grounds direction is going. People that sit on personnel and finance feel great about personnel and finance. And the rest of us are just sitting here going, huh? You know, and so this is kind of how I felt with this. And, you know, I did mention this, is if this was in the works and if we're passing on this power, then this is a prime example of what happens, is we allowed a K through 4 change to go a certain way all year, communication, going to Round Prairie, doing Q&As, all that, right? But now we're okay with 3 months before the end of the school year having zero communication, and all of a sudden what I feel like was reactive of some sort, right? And the board's just supposed to sit there and take the hits and say, well, it's in our strategic plan. We didn't think it was coming all at once, but we're just going to sit there and say, okay. I'm not okay with that. I think that gives it gives too much power to one person, and there's no checks and balances. And I think Dr. Fadley had great intentions. It was just kind of a poor execution personally, and that's why we got so much blowback. And that's why when we have a statement with WIA a month before where we're together, and a month later we've got a statement from WIA where we're apart, right? And this is all due to communication. So what, to me, would help fix communication? Pulse checks. And per Century Code, as Mrs. Norby Johnner sent us, it's to establish a system of free public schools for all children of legal school age residing within the district. Organize, establish, operate, and maintain elementary, middle, and high schools. Acquire real property and construct school buildings and other facilities. Relocate or discontinue schools and liquidate the assets of the district as required by law, provided no site may be required or building constructed, or no school may be organized, established, operated, maintained, discontinued, or changed in location without the approval of the State Board of School Education if it's outside the boundary. I mean, and again, I get what you guys are all saying is we're getting in the weeds. But when we don't get in the weeds and things start to go crazy, who steps in? Is it Chairman Junt that steps in for all of us? You know, because there's people on this board that think giving Dr. Fadley an example of where to hold a board meeting is micromanaging. So, I mean, what are we here for? You know, I would say my thing, and this is what Mrs. Johnner said, it is her legal opinion that the law would allow a school board to delegate the powers identified in NDC 15-1-09-33 within the discretion of the board, depending on a variety of factors that would be unique to a particular school district because the law says a board may exercise its board powers. However, whether a board should delegate those powers is a full board decision that may be revisited at any time in an open meeting as properly noticed, and that's what we're doing today. And that's because 2 weeks ago, we had a 3-3 vote on a strategic plan that was a 7-0 vote not too long ago. And that shouldn't be happening on a board. We should know the exact direction we're going at all times and at the same time. And last week's vote showed we were all on different pages. And with Mr. Junt and Mr. Renner feeling like nobody had to vote and the other of us rest thinking we did, that's a lack of communication. And if we need to put it in our strategic plan that we give full executive power to Dr. Faley for all these items that I just read, we need to put that in a sentence because it's very confusing the way we've been doing it. I know that I've went back and listened to minutes, and there's times that we've said, well, we haven't done a vote on the Round Prairie situation. We haven't done a vote on the Garden Valley situation. And now in 2 weeks ago, now all of a sudden we're not voting on it. So, I mean, we've kind of contradicted ourselves throughout the year, to me, and that's my opinion. So I am for putting this back under the board power. To me, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's a good pulse check. It lets the public see in board minutes what's going on. It lets Dr. Faley and his team show what they're doing, how they got there, why behind the what's, how long it's taken them, what feedback they've been given, what schools they've been into, what staff has been doing it, not just executive cabinet stuff. And board members are not asking to be on the committees, so it won't add more time to our schedule since the information should and would be readily available during the planning process. But to me, if we continually say we're in the weeds, then be ready for what just happened in the last month repeatedly, because that is the discretion that we give one person. And there are 7 members of the board elected by the public to have opinions about something, and these board powers say what they are.
Mr. Renner?
I think this is reactionary. I believe Dr. Faley has taken the steps to increase the communication. He's even found creative ways to do that. I don't think that this would be consistent with a board governance model. Also, there's no indicators of success. When do you vote yes? When do you vote no on this? What's considered successful communication? That it just seems like we'd be going off our gut instincts, and I don't think that's right. I think Dr. Faley's doing a good job. I don't think the board needs to take over this.
I just had 2 questions for those that might be considering voting in favor of this motion tonight. The first one is related to the language that's in there where it says related to facilities use. Could somebody define for me, I guess, what the intent of that would be? It would, I'll give a couple of examples. If we were to change the office building that's in the Innovation Academy, that's currently the Coyote Foundation, into educational classroom space, would that be a change in facilities use? Or if we were to take a different room in an elementary school that's currently being used as classroom space and converted into something else, would that be a change in facilities use? And is that the intent of this language?
I can answer that, as I'm the one that came up with this specific item. Facilities use would relate to the overall. That would be Round Prairie becoming ELL instead of a educational environment that's specifically a school that's K2, K3, K4. That is facilities use. The utilization inside, whether a classroom is a classroom for 5 hours of a day or a activity space for 2 hours of a day, that's not what this relates to. This relates specifically to the utilization of a building for its use on a daily, dedicated, defined moment. We utilize spaces for gym that are basketball courts, but they don't use them for basketball courts 24/7. So I think that would be considered getting into the weeds, directing at that point. The one statement that keeps being made is getting into the weeds, but it's not getting in the weeds when it's board-defined powers that your electors gave you when they elected you. And so to say that these are reactionary, the main focus of this was to ensure the prolonged communication of an action. When we interviewed Dr. Fadley throughout the process, he talked about changes happening in a district, and when you make those changes, that takes a year of communication to the public before you act on it. So specifically in an interview, he made that statement, and then here we have a moment where he didn't follow through on that. So that is where I'm looking at. If we want to define what that communication is, we should. And we should make sure that it's communicated over that, because that's what I believed I was getting when I was building these plans and when I was hiring a superintendent. That's what the statements were made.
And then the second question that I had was, if this motion were to pass this evening, how does the board envisioning this type of process being handled? Would the board be relying upon the superintendent's recommendation? Would we be looking for a board committee that would be assigned to a project like this? Are we going to have board retreats where we're bringing in the cabinet and building administrators and teachers to talk about this plan? What sort of process for folks that are in favor of this?
Once again, it would be the communication piece. Anytime we do anything major, anything that comes out of committee, I would believe that building and grounds would be a part of this already in deciding facilities use. So recommendation coming to the board. We, as a board, did that last year when we added 2 additional kindergarten classes to McVeigh. We made that decision as a board. We voted on that. That came to us as a recommendation out of committee to add kindergarten teachers to McVeigh because they needed the 2 sections. We voted on that as a board to do that. So the lines of what we are and aren't supposed to vote on. So I think it comes down to coming through personnel finance, coming through committees that are already there that can make the recommendation saying, hey, we've got the money to employ the teachers to fill these sections without our budget going backwards. And building and grounds saying, hey, we've figured out a way to define this space where at Bakken potentially with the reconfiguration of the office space, which potentially could hold 3 classrooms, we as a board will be deciding on that money to be spent in those spaces. So this isn't a overreaching, overarching. This is Dr. Fadley's cabinet coming up with a plan, presenting it coming through committee, coming to the board with recommendations for approval. Nothing beyond that, not the board sitting there saying, well, I think this school would be great as a K. Let's make a K facility only. That's not the board's role. But the board's role is to ensure that the communications are happening and that we're following procedures, not delegating our elected powers to one individual to then make the full decision.
Thank you, Mr. Swint. Mr. Wallstead, and then I'll go to Ms. Williams, and then Ms. Wheeler.
Dr. Fadley, I'm concerned for the education of our students, obviously, but I care deeply about you and your reputation. And so I want to hear from you. Dr. Fadley, how many school districts have you been superintendent of?
Counting this one,
Yes.
I've been a superintendent in 3 other school districts.
What have you learned about this school district and this school board and this whole thing with the reconfiguration proposal? So I just want to hear from your heart, Dr. Fadley.
So I think yeah, I'll be brutally honest. There has been a tendency for those who speak the loudest to be heard. I think there are a lot of individuals who understand that there is inequity in the school system, that are excited about that equity being fixed. I think that individuals in this school district are ready for leadership and strong leadership to move forward. I think what I've learned about this community is they want to be involved. when there's an issue that affects them personally. And that is, I think, kind of validated by the fact that over the course of the year, I've held multiple opportunities for people to come visit with me and ask me questions about the strategic plan, the achievement of students, and very little attendance. And that's not anything new. I mean, if you go back and you look at the superintendent search, I think it's a prime example of that in play. I think that this particular proposal, if I'm honest with you, is a very dangerous direction for the school board to go. And if this is the direction the school board is headed, then I think we need to reconsider the training that we're going to have with board governance, because it's a contradiction to all that board governance stands for. At a certain point in time, you have to hire somebody that you trust. And if they make a calculated misstep and they correct it, then you have to acknowledge it. And that's exactly what has happened here. So I would ask, grade configurations. We currently have one grade configuration, maybe two, that are currently on the docket, and that's at Garden Valley, moving from a K2 grade configuration to a K4 grade configuration. And perhaps you could throw Missouri Ridge in there as well. If we were to add K4 or K5 there, depending on what that would be. But the rest of the grade configurations already exist. 5, 6, 7, 8. All of those grade configurations exist within the school district. So my take on this is a huge step backwards, and it is a reactionary situation. Board policies were violated ad nauseum in the communication structures that led to some of the concerns that were shared on this particular issue. And to me, that's extremely disappointing. And those violations weren't from the administrative cabinet or the superintendent. So this particular issue is concerning to me.
Anything additional, Mr. Wallstead, before I go to Ms. Williams? Okay, Ms. Williams?
Yeah, I want to remain calm on this because I can feel that this is supposed to be a discussion because there's a lack of communication, and that lack of communication came from people that could give more communication. So to me, when we keep saying reactionary, what I feel is reactionary is removing an agenda item a couple hours before a meeting because a couple board members had conversations with the superintendent. That's reactionary to me, Mr. Renner. Not us having a conversation 2 weeks later with a legal opinion, with all these things given to us so that we can try to not have such an emotional conversation regarding this, because like we've said, something happened, Dr. Fadley is going to correct it, and we're just supposed to move on and say, oops, our bad, that was just, no big deal, it just blew up the city, the schools, all that. And the one thing that I've known from serving on these boards, my 2 boards that I've served on, is you can never over-communicate with this public. And I get so tired of us playing catch-up to explain to the public what we already know. If we already know what's coming down the pipe, why not say it? If you already know you're changing ASB next year, why didn't we say it back at Round Prairie Days? That's reactionary to me. And looking in on it, using these words to other board members, it almost feels like, to a point, gaslighting, stonewalling, all that kind of stuff, because it makes me feel like, oh, by asking a question of Dr. Fadley, that's me questioning Dr. Fadley. Me asking a question of Chairman Junt to be more specific, to be more willing to share more information, that's me questioning Chairman Junt as my leader. I don't think so. I think I'm a grown-up and I'm an elected official and I'm able to have these conversations to get to the bottom of how we got to where we are right now, which is some people feeling miscommunicated. again, I'm not just talking about board members. We had a WIA statement go out that said they were confused. We had people on our strategic planning committees making comments saying that this is not what they put on and thought was coming. You have board members sitting here from August saying, we never once heard about a 5 through 8 reconfiguration to fix a K through 4 problem. And because we're questioning that, that makes us reactionary? I don't think so. That makes me concerned. I mean, if K through 4 was our major issue and changing 5 through 8 was going to fix that, we should have been talking about that all year. But from what I heard, we had enough room to move Missouri Ridge students into the middle school without touching ASB. That was all I heard all year until 2 weeks ago. And me having questions about that, concerns that the public has concerns about it, concerns that the staff has concerns about it, is reactionary? Again, I don't think so. The other part of it is when WIA's statement went out with us about Representative Dyke, we did an email blast, right? I mean, it buzzed my phone, it went to everything. Have we ever done that for K through 4 reconfiguration at Missouri Ridge? K through 4 reconfiguration for Garden Valley? Have we done that other than for Round Prairie? No. Have we done that for the ASB before we put it on an agenda? No. And we're okay with that? You know, again, I want to give Dr. Fadley the benefit of the doubt that these items that Mrs. Johnner explained to us in a legal opinion, not my opinion, not your guys' opinion. This is a legal opinion that establishes by century code what we are able to do. And to me, you know, my conversation with Mrs. Johnner, since I'm the one that asked for this legal opinion, she said it is very common for superintendents to have these powers given to them in smaller districts. It's not as common in larger districts that affect thousands and thousands of students and thousands of families to have however many people. Dr. Faley, you made a comment at your Q&A the other day that the people that you had communicated with was your executive cabinet to make this decision for the 5 through 8. And that's not enough people to make a decision for a 5 through 8, personally. So the strategic plan was made with all these other people, but now it's been taken out and it seems like only 6 or 7 people are doing it. And if the board's not able to discuss it anymore because you guys think that's micromanaging, and you've got, and again, let's just be frank, we've got a district that's afraid to come forward and speak, even though we have policies in place to protect them. Who's going to speak up then? Just Dr. Fadley and the cabinet? Chairman Junt?
Go to Ms. Wheeler next, and then Mr. Swint.
All right, I'm also going to start this by trying to be calm. I'm just going to make the statement of this is not micromanagement, and this is not reactionary. This is plain and simple century code, period, end of story. We have the right as elected officials to make these decisions. At no time during the creation of the strategic plan was there anything discussed or voted on that said the superintendent is the one who's going to make these decisions about the buildings in our district. Not once was that discussed at any point in time or voted on. And I also have looked back on things, and at no time was that done. We had lengthy discussions at our retreat about Missouri Ridge, Round Prairie. We had those discussions. We said, let's do it. There was a vote. It was a 6-1. There was a vote. So again, this is not micromanagement. This is not reactionary. This is 100% the law. It's century code. I've also had these same discussions with our attorney and have gotten the exact same information. If we do not make this change, we are going against what we are elected to do under century code. And it's not to micromanage Dr. Fadley. It's not to tell Dr. Fadley what he can or cannot do. It is to ensure that appropriate communication is happening with the board. We're not being blindsided. And we have the ability to offer an opinion on what's happening to our buildings in our district that we are elected to oversee and to oversee Dr. Fadley. I'm going to stop right there. I'd like to say more, but I'm going to hold my tongue.
All right, we'll go to Mr. Swint next, and then Mr. Casmer.
I think a statement that was made by Dr. Fadley should be addressed since he made the statement and was not told that it wasn't okay. I will openly admit, as I have to Mr. Junt, that I did violate board policy. I was contacted by people with concerns within this district, and I was told that those things were merely rumor. And then it became fact. So for me, I own it. I always own when I make a mistake. I have told Mr. Junt that he is perfectly fine to hold me accountable. If they would like to remove me from committees, I would accept that completely. But Dr. Fadley is our employee. We are the one group that has the role and responsibility of holding him accountable. This is a duly elected board that holds the right under Century Code to have this power. This does not take away from board governance, which we have not gone through yet and may change my opinion when we begin that process. Under this current situation, it was made clear to me that this board needs to ensure that we are properly holding oversight over the decisions and directions of this district. Not questioning, but being informed. We are not informed. We were surprised, and when we had meetings with Dr. Fadley, things were taken off that agenda immediately after, which I requested to have put back on to have a discussion about. I made mistakes. I violated board policy. Mr. Junt could name the policies that I violated, I'm sure. I own it. Hold me accountable. But I will also hold my superintendent accountable, and I will hold this board accountable for the decisions that we make. I've said it. I've made statements. We have a responsibility to our community, and ensuring that it's communicated to our community going forward, the plans and direction of this district should be defined by us, the board. That communication should be made sure to happen in a timely manner, not sprung on us and not heard through rumor and insinuation. And that was proven to me that many of the rumors were fact when it was presented. So that means a lot more people knew before the board knew. And those conversations could have happened in a public meeting and avoided this entire situation. To call it reactionary, to utilize your powers, I think is an unfair statement. To pit board members against each other is unfair. We work together as a good unit. And whatever decision we walk out of here today with, we will abide by. But I do feel to hand away a power that we were elected for is wrong for this board to do. It doesn't mean we're questioning Dr. Fadley. I've canceled all my monthly meetings with him going forward because I believe the conversations that are happening behind closed doors should happen in the public. That is my stance.
Go to Mr. Casmer and then to you, Dr. Fadley.
Well, I do not think Century Code says that you should do this. It says that you may do this. So we're not breaking any Century Code by voting the other way. Let's be perfectly honest. That does not say that we should be doing this. It says we may, and that's up to the board. But it's certainly not that we should be doing this. It's not what Century Code says. And I thank you for giving us all the Century Code, because that's what it says. It doesn't say that we should be doing this. It says that we may do it.
Dr. Fadley?
I just want to correct the record. Mr. Swint, I wasn't referring to you. I was referring to other individuals that violated board policy by not following the proper communication pathways with the superintendent.
Mr. Renner?
Yeah, one other thing, I did not request that agenda item be removed to Dr. Fadley. Ms. Williams, when you spoke earlier, you said that you insinuated that I requested the agenda item be removed. I did not. You said 2 board members. You looked at me and Mr. Junt.
Oh, no.
Did I
I
misunderstand
wasn't
that?
insinuating that you did. No,
Okay, that's
Mr.
fine.
Junt, or Dr. Fadley last 2 weeks ago said he consulted with Chairman Junt, so I know it's between Dr. Fadley and Chairman
Okay,
Junt.
okay,
And-
thank you.
As per policy, Chairman John and I are charged with setting the board agenda, so I was following protocol and speaking with the board president before making any decision to remove an item that needed to be vetted in greater detail.
Mr. Wallstead, did you have further comment?
Just one final one. Dr. Fadley, I really like you, and I represented that in the evaluation that we did of you. I've been in leadership for 30 years, and I've learned the hard way, and I guess all I would ask is, when you begin to turn the ship, it takes a long time to turn the ship, and I appreciate the decision-making process you're in, knowing the numbers and wanting to do what's best for our students. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you've probably learned a lot in this whole process. And I guess just with my personal candor, would you say, Dr. Fadley, in the future, if you start to turn the ship, just communicate intentions with us, the board. We support you, we like you, we want to be behind you, but we just want to be in the know along with you. When I was a pastor of a church, I had phenomenal ideas. I had great ideas, but when I pitched them too quickly to my church, they didn't think it was all that great. So it just took a long time for them to get on board. And there's always those early adopters. About 4% of people are early adopters, and everybody else drags their feet. So that's just my heart, Doctor.
But Ms. Williams, and then back to you, Dr. Fadley.
I guess I would just like to ask too, for the board members that are not wanting to maybe go the direction of having, like you said, John, it's not a shall, it's a may, right? But if it's a may and we move forward with that, how would you guys propose that we don't run into this situation again? What's your alternative?
I want to trust the leadership that they've learned a great lesson in this process, and they won't repeat the same thing again.
Dr. Fadley, do you feel like there was any lesson to be learned in this situation?
I think all you need to do is look at the presentations and the forums that are being held at the current time to answer that question.
Yeah, and again, this is why, as easy as it sounds like we're talking right now, that, oh yeah, I went back and did this, I did that. The original question is, why did we wait to do it after removing it from the agenda? And that's what this may shall avoids, is there is no more, Dr. Fadley is only one person, you guys. So I don't expect him to always have the right answers. I don't expect him to do everything perfect. I don't expect the cabinet to do all that. But that is why there's 7 elected board members that have these types of powers under may and shall to be able to give some insight of what the community is saying, feeling, because we're elected to do that under these powers. And I think it's being taken as like, we don't want Dr. Fadley to do anything. We don't trust him at all anymore. We want to take everything away from him. And to me, that's not it. It literally started with a confusion from last August that I asked Chairman Junt about 2 weeks ago, that I was not aware that we were no longer voting on schools. We have always voted on schools. We've talked about voting on schools when they change their times on starts. So why wouldn't this board think, if we're reusing ASB and putting 9 more classrooms in it, that we would have an idea of that happening? I mean, when did we get so far off course, you guys, that we should be finding out the same information at the time of the public just because that's how it happened? It doesn't make it right. And how, I understand, Mr. Wallstead, you trust the leadership moving forward, But what if next time this happens again and we don't get this conversation? It's just closed. It's just reutilized. You know, you've got staff upset, you've got students upset, you know, and then what? We just have another conversation about it and say, oops. And that's my question. We're just taking the word for, we just learned all from this, that's it. We're not going to put anything in writing. We're not going to, I mean, because we can change the strategic plan to at least say, could we have updates anytime there's a major change in a school building? I mean, could we at least put something in there that, I don't want to say forces the hand, but gives us an ability to know? Or is that micromanaging as well?
I guess I would just ask the question is what action has taken place, what decision has been finalized that we're talking about? Because the communications that I've been having over the course of the school year have been problem solving. So there's a narrative being driven here that the conversation has been in isolation of staff, and that is not true. Staff have been involved in these conversations. Administrators have been involved in these conversations all throughout the process. Now, there were some individuals that weren't happy with the recommendations that were going to come forward. And then we had, and whether we use the word reaction or letter from the WIA, understand that the superintendent's office has met ongoing throughout the year with WIA to have conversations about things of concern. And none of this ever has come up. The survey that was submitted by that organization never was even shared with the superintendent. So if you want to talk about communication, communication is both directions, not just one. So the survey that was done with Panorama.
I think we're getting off topic. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, sir. I think we're getting off topic.
I think at the end of the day here, I appreciate everybody's comments. The board needs to choose which direction it wants to go on this matter. Century Code's very clear. It's may. The board may retain, the right of those 35 or 36 powers, or it may choose to delegate that. And the proposed amendment this evening, I think, clearly will spell out which direction the board wants to go regarding this issue. I think it's been well discussed. It's been well vetted across the board here this evening with everybody's feelings. So I'll open it up for one last comment or question if anybody has one, and then we're going to call the roll on it. So I'll go to board members first, and then I'll come to you last, Dr. Fadley. Anybody else with any other comments, questions they want to make?
I do just have a question. Dr. Faley, how did you come up with the 5 through 8 reconfiguration within the last few weeks? And if it was within the last 6 months, why was it waited so long to be communicated?
There was conversation initially to look at a different configuration that was brought forward and discussed. The leadership of that particular endeavor shifted, and other conversations happened with a larger group, including myself and other administrators. And they brought forward a recommendation based on the safety of the 5th grade and moving the 5th grade to a self-contained environment. And that was the primary focus that was looked at. Albeit there would need to be some modifications to a building. Part of that plan was also to create an environment where innovation and people in the Innovation Academy could be maneuvered onto the different teams and build that capacity across the system. So that's the recommendation that had come forward, and I supported the work of the team that put it together. Now, in removing the agenda item, which is part of that whole process, there obviously was reaction to that needed to be vetted some more. That was the reason for removing the agenda item, was to go back to the drawing table and see if there were better ways to do it that the team could come up with. So that's how we got where we were.
And I guess my ask again, just regardless of how this vote goes, if lessons were learned, it's that we take the same amount of time for major decisions for any school. I don't think Grand Prairie was more important than ASB or any of that. So me personally, I think everything needs the same amount of time, and especially when you're talking about something, again, it wouldn't matter what school you're talking about. You weren't here for this, but the whole reason that we are a reorganized district now started because high school students were removed halfway through a year without any knowledge and anything like that. And when you mess with people's students, you mess with who they think their teachers are going to be, you mess with the staff, you tend to have what happened this week happen. And for me, it felt a lot like the high school situation 4 years ago. And in this situation, we actually had a lot more time to be more upfront and honest about what we were discussing on our end. And it just felt, again, it was a surprise. And as a board member that ran to serve for this district and has put in a lot of time and effort, it sometimes does feel like we're just kind of here. And for what purpose? If you guys don't want our opinion, you don't want anything like that, then, board governance definitely can't get here soon enough. But I think we're definitely getting off track of what I think board governance is. So I'm very interested in that. Thank you.
Any other board members with comments?
Just one quick one, only because of the fact that it's actually a question, because it's been brought up so many times. Who was on the team that came up with the decision? Dr. Faithley.
I'm going to need I'm going to need probably some help. So Mr. Clausen, Mr. Riesgraf, Mrs. Zimmerman, Dr. Arneson, Mrs. Brenner, Mr. Clausen, I think, Mr. Neske, was Mrs. Cowan, Mrs. Norby. So just about every middle-level educator.
Okay.
Administrator, excuse me.
Okay. Was anyone removed?
Was anyone removed from what?
From the committee for whatever reason, like maybe their job duties weren't allowing them to continue with the committee. There was interference.
Did we remove anyone from the group? I don't believe so.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense. What staff members were included? And when I say staff, I mean certified staff teachers.
Did we have any teachers on the other than the transition teams that initially met in December as part of the second stage?
Okay. What parents were involved? How many? Just a number. You don't need to tell me all the names. Just a number of how many parents. I imagine there was quite a bit.
I don't believe there were any parents. This was a school organization plan and administrative function and a process.
Okay. So there was no teacher, certified staff, or paras involved, and there was no parents involved. It was strictly administrators who aren't actually in the buildings, with the exception of one or two. Is that a fair statement?
I would say Mrs. Norby's in the building, Mrs. Cowan's in the building, Mr. Reeves Graff's in the building, Mrs. Zimmerman's in the building, Dr. Arneson and Mrs. Brenner are constantly in the building, so I would say the answer is no, that's not a fair statement.
Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying it. That's why I'm asking it. Okay, I'm done for now. I think maybe we should just take this to a vote.
Mr. Swint, did you have one last comment, and then we'll call for the question?
I will say, I think one thing that's being focused on here is the recent issue. I think this has been kind of more a snowballed issue where we were presented a plan at a board retreat and then have not received any updates on that plan in a board setting since the board retreat, and everything has changed direction. So my concern isn't with anything that you guys do with the buildings. I expect the administration to make a decision and come to the board with the recommendation, and us to be able to have a chance to take a vote on that, and for us to be able to evaluate, hey, was this communicated to the community? Did we have town halls? Did we have great communication and get a whole lot of buy-in so that the next thing that we do has great communication and a whole lot of buy-in? There's this focus saying that this was one item and reactionary. That is not the case, and why I put this on here. Because it's not my decision on if ASB stays ASB. What I would like to see is the communication piece, and ensuring the communication from our board retreat that said Brown Prairie closing, Garden Valley closing, to zero communication at the board level until 2 weeks ago when we had an item that would have been presented and then removed that created a whole lot of backlash. Had this been being communicated throughout the process to the community, I think we're at a completely different conversation here. And I think 2 weeks ago we would have had a meeting with the board fully bought into a decision and going that route. So to say it's reactionary is unfair. I have evaluated this before I brought it as an agenda item. I want to trust Dr. Fadley. I want to believe in him and him be the driving force of this district. I want to go into the board governance model ready to learn and become a better board member. That doesn't mean that I have to give away the rights that we may or may not exercise. That is my position on this. This is not an attack on Dr. Fadley's leadership. This is ensuring that the board clearly defines and communicates to our superintendent the direction that we need to communicate things out. Having low attended meetings on a Saturday and ask the superintendent is not your fault. That is not your fault. But having big ticket items on those meetings for questions and ensuring the community knows that those items could be talked about in a more advanced notice, that does fall to you. So that is where we as a board defining that communication piece is all I'm asking for. I'm not asking to tie his hands behind his back or his administrative team. It's ensuring solid communication. It is not an attack on Dr. Fadley. I believe he is the man to run this district. And if anybody else thinks otherwise, sorry, we're the ones that evaluate him. And we will evaluate him according to the defined lines that we put out. And that is what I'm asking for, is a defined line in this situation to ensure that we don't have to sit here and look like we're attacking the man that we oversee, because I am not. I have stated that I made mistakes through this process, and I have apologized. And I will accept anything the board wants to hold me accountable for. But we can define these lines and make sure they're held. That is all I'm saying. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, board members, for the discussion on this item. I think we're going to move forward to call the question on this here. Just as a refresher, the motion on the floor is to amend the district strategic plan and long-range facilities plan to add the following language as an amendment to each one of those plans. All changes related to facilities use and grade configurations must receive a final approval by board action vote. Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Nay.
Aye.
No.
Nay, motion fails 3-4. Move on to agenda item 9R. Administration recommends the approval of the open enrollment with Alexander School District. Copy of that proposed application has been attached in board book. What's the board's wishes?
I'll move we approve the open enrollment agreement with Alexander School District.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 9S is administration's recommendation of the approval of the open enrollment with Bainville School District. Copy of those proposed agreements are attached in board book. What's the board's wishes on this item?
I'll move we approve the open enrollment agreement with Bainville School District.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 9T is administration's recommendation of the approval of the tuition agreement with Beach Public School District. Copy of that proposed agreement is attached in board book. What's the board's wishes on this item?
I'll move we approve the tuition agreement with Beach Public School District.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Wheeler. Any discussion? Dr. Fadley?
I just want to draw the board's attention. Mr. Swint had asked a question about this particular school district. In a previous action item, this district is approximately 2 hours from our community. So just to clarify this tuition agreement with Beach Public School District, I did contact the superintendent to dive into this particular question. This is a residential treatment center, special school, where the student will be attending based on their needs. So it's not that they're traveling back and forth on a weekly basis. It's actual residential treatment.
Any questions or discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 9U is administration's recommendation of a proposed amendment to the 2023-24 school year calendar. Copy of that proposed amendment is attached in board book. I believe the changes were highlighted in orange or yellow there. What's the board's wishes on this item?
Move to approve the changes to the calendar.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Kasmer. Any questions or discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, 9V, is the superintendent evaluation. Copy of the board consolidated evaluation has been attached in board book. I'll open it up to discussion or any comments that anybody wants to make, and then we'll go through each section, as they should be approved in sections rather than the full evaluation. So any comments or discussion?
I did not evaluate the superintendent during this evaluation because I felt that my current view of him was tainted.
Thank you, Mr. Swin. Anybody else? I'll just share a few comments from my section of the evaluation. I think you inherited a lot of challenges, Dr. Fadley, in the school district coming in here. You're the fifth superintendent that I've worked with since being elected to the District 8 school board back in March of 2020. I think it's vitally important to the future success of the district to have stability in the superintendent position. Some of the major accomplishments that I feel have occurred since your arrival and your leadership. One is the creation of the deferred maintenance plan to address the district's long list of deferred maintenance issues. Two, the creation of a transportation replacement plan to address our aging bus fleet. 3, accountability finally being implemented in the district, both from an academic achievement standpoint as well as a personnel standpoint. 4, financial reporting that is to the standard that every school board in the state should expect, as well as every community should expect. 5, I appreciate you researching the possibility of enhancing our transportation services across the district to all K-4 students, and look forward to that information coming forward in meetings. The weekly Coyote Corner that's been published, as well as the addition of the comments and inquiries section added to the district website. I appreciate the enhanced security that you've looked at for the schools across the district, some of which have been implemented already, and others that have been approved, waiting further construction or equipment. I've appreciated your foresight on the CTE project to look at other grant opportunities to offset some of the building fund dollars that may need to be allocated by the school board. You've identified areas within the federal funding area of this district that were not being collected as they should have been, and you're working to correct that and collect on those funds that other personnel should have been taken care of. Item number 11, the development of a plan to address our K-4 spacing needs in the short term. Well, maybe it was not rolled out as perfectly as everybody would have liked. I appreciate you addressing the issue and realizing that 30 kindergartners to a classroom is not in the best interest of students. As always, I think there's areas that we can improve and work on moving forward. The first one being potentially your visibility throughout the school buildings, and I don't view that as a negative. You were thrown into a situation where you had to serve as the superintendent as well as the business manager for a lengthy period of time, and there's only so many hours in the day to do everything. But I think now that we have Mr. Anderson on board, and I feel that you're a superintendent that likes to be out in the schools and seeing the students and the teachers, that's one area that I think moving forward we can potentially improve on. Communication and engagement with staff and stakeholders. I think you've tried a lot of different methods. What I'm getting at here is potentially evaluating those methods. You've mentioned previously that the monthly Q&A sessions have been not greatly attended. I don't know if there's changes that can be made. Traditionally, there's been a lack of engagement in this community. We saw that in the stakeholder meetings that were held by RSP when we went through the superintendent search. So I realize there's only so many things that one person can do, but evaluating maybe those methods that we're utilizing and seeing if there's a better way to do so to enhance engagement is one area. And lastly, recognition of staff and the positive things that are happening in the district. I think you've made good strides in this. You've recognized staff publicly in the board meetings. You've highlighted staff in the Coyote Corner. There's a lot of great things happening in this district that sometimes gets drowned out by other areas. And I think we always just need to keep that at the forefront, recognizing that there are a lot of good things happening in this district and celebrating those accomplishments. So I appreciate you being here, Dr. Fadley, and I think you've done a lot of good things in a short amount of time and a lot of difficult circumstances that you've had to take on in your short period of time. Anybody else before we entertain a motion on the first section of the evaluation?
Yeah, of the first section, just the very first one.
We'll go with any discussion or comments that you might have, and then I'll open it up to a motion on what would be section A.
Yeah, just as an overall, Dr. Fadley, as I've said before, I think you're the man for the job. I think you're the right person to do it. It just, again, we're in a very specific district that has a lot of history, and I always want to be very proactive in how we handle our district, how we handle our employees, and how we handle just our community as a whole. I think sometimes that we have the ability to make or break how people are feeling in this district by how we react, how we listen, how we respond, and all those things. And I know that I've said this before, but I am not one of those people that just because I have the power to do something, I'm going to do it. I want to make sure that we've done all the proper steps and given everybody the proper time to have their say and all that stuff, and I like it to be consistent. So I think that this was something that could have been avoided, but that does not, again, make me think any less of the team or anything like that. It's just something we need to learn from. And one of the biggest things for me is not what the person does the first time, it's how they respond after being addressed. So, thank you.
Anybody else?
We're making the motion on section A and then we'll comment, correct?
I'm taking comments and discussion and then hoping to run through each section.
Quickly?
Yes.
Okay, great. I wrote quite a bit in my evaluation of you. I do acknowledge how great you do getting down to a child's level. That's huge. I've seen it in action, and I like it. I'd have to say one of the biggest areas that adjustments need to be made is that communication. I think we've made that adamantly clear today, that communication has got to be adjusted. Plus, we need to figure out a way to get buy-in from staff and rebuild some trust that's been lost. We've got some tremendous staff in this district, and I think that a lot of them feel as if they've been hung out to dry, that they're not being acknowledged. I am not pointing a finger, I am making a very blanket statement, because there's a lot of rumors floating around, and I don't know which ones are true and which ones aren't. The actions here tonight are making me think some of them are more true than not, but time will tell.
Go ahead.
The way that you interact with children and that you can get to their level and make them feel appreciated and respected, dare I say loved, I'd like to see that more with some in other situations. There's a time and a place for firmness, and there's a time and a place for softness. And I'd like to see a little bit more softness from time to time, when appropriate. Otherwise, my words in the review speak from where my thoughts are.
Mr. Casmer?
Well, I would certainly appreciate all you've done. I mean, we probably never could have seen where the superintendent took over the business manager's duties and did them both without 1 cent more pay. Never complaining about any of it. We knew we needed a lot of change. We come into 2 districts, there was going to be a change for everybody. Change is very, very hard for everybody. So during this time, I mean, we're going to see people not happy because they got to change, and they're not really wanting to change. Nobody wants to change. I mean, myself included. You know, at 65 years of age or 60, you know, I'm kind of set in my ways. And so do teachers get set in their ways, and so do administrators. But in this district, in both districts, we haven't had somebody that's going to mentor at the same time as hold them accountable. And we finally have somebody going to do that. And that has not happened for several years. Dare I say, quite a few years. So I think, you know, we all have to sit back, and we're going to have some more changes because we need it. We're a growing company, a growing district. We're going to need schools. We're going to need people to be moved around. And, you know, we've got to let the guy that we hired do his job. He's got a D behind his name for doctorate. None of us do in this educational field. We need to look to him and go to him on a weekly basis if you need to find out exactly what he's doing. And my trust is with him because I believe he knows what he's doing.
Mr. Renner, Mr. Wallstead, any comments you want to make before I open up to a motion on Section 8?
No, just thank you for doing that dual role as business manager and superintendent for the good part of the year. I know I'm sure you put in a lot of long hours, so thank you for that. And You've gotten involved in the community, even though we haven't directed you to, you've just went and done it. And so I thank you for that. And, the Friday updates are very helpful. I don't feel like we've ever had more information coming at us than we have before. Sometimes it's hard to read it all, so thank you.
Dr. Fadley, you can always tell who the leader of any organization is. He's the guy with all the arrows in his back. Thanks for leading.
All right, I'll open it up to a motion on Section A of the evaluation, which is goal and vision setting. What's the wishes of the board on this section?
I'll move we approve Section A.
Okay, is there a second? Any further discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Yes.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Section B is board relations. What's the board's wishes on this section?
I'll move we approve Section B.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll on that, please.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye, motion carries. Section C is human resource management. What's the board's wishes on this section?
I'll move to approve Section C.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Section D, curriculum and student support services. What's the board's wishes on this item? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Section E, community relations. What's the board's wishes on this section?
I'd move to approve Section E.
Is there any discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Aye.
Aye, motion carries. And the last section, F, operations and resources management. What's the board's wishes on this section?
I'd move to approve Section F.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll on that, please.
Yes.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, 9W, is an executive session to discuss negotiations with Ms. Lori Olson as related to her voluntary resignation pursuant to North Dakota Century Code Section 44-04-19.1 subsection 9. This item may be discussed in executive session. Legal authority for closing this portion of the meeting is North Dakota Century Code Section 44-04-19.1 subsection 9. Topic or purpose of this executive session is to discuss negotiations with Ms. Lori Olson as related to her voluntary resignation and may be reviewed in executive session. Williston Basin School District Number 7 School Board is conducting an executive session to discuss negotiating strategy. At this time, a motion would be in order to conduct this discussion in executive session rather than in an open meeting. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ashley, let's call the roll, please.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye, motion carries. Executive session will be recorded. All members of the governing body are reminded to limit their discussion during the executive session to the announced topic. Any collective decision, collective commitment, or other final action by the governing body must occur after it reconvenes in an open meeting unless final action is specifically required by law to be taken during the executive session. We will now ask the members of the public who are attending the meeting to please leave the room.